And we are live on today's pre-show of our N10-008 Network Plus Study Group. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We got about 10 minutes to go. You can see the clock counting down. Top of the hour is when we start the study group, where I will ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. And in the second hour, I will take your questions with whatever you'd like to ask. It's that easy. Right now, I am making sure the stream is set up okay. That's our streaming box. That looks really good. I've got recordings going on the bottom right. 2 recordings, actually. So really, we got 3, 2 here, and then 1 on the YouTube. We've got the chat room. Hey, chat room. Hey, everybody. I can see that folks are already checking in. Let's Play was already here. First thing, 59 degrees in Sao Paulo. We've got, because it's winter, he reminds everyone, different part of the world. We're in the southern, the hemispheres are, anyway. And then other folks checking in. How's everybody doing? Josh was asking about CompTIA A+ material from people who have retired. So I think if you're looking at historical A+ materials, those are great. But there are people in the industry no longer working in the industry, and that's one of them. San Francisco, hey, how are you? Long Island, New York is here. That was a bad representation, but that's all I got, people. It's worth every penny you paid for attending, isn't it? Let's see if I can make sure these look good. We have a different Q&A today, so there's a little bit different that I have to work on my side. So if you will be very patient with me, I have gone through a number of tests with this. Everything seems to be working okay, but we'll see how it goes. We've got time to work on this. We can pause that. All right, stats look good for this. Hello, Port Elizabeth, South Africa. London is here. Turkey is checking in. We got folks in California. Thanks for being here. We've got San Francisco. We already did. Did we do Dublin, Georgia? Just up the street from me. I think Northwest Atlanta is here. Good to have you. We've got all new QA again. It's all new QA. So we've got a lot. There's Phoenix, Indianapolis. I'm going to put up a map on the next one, and we can just click on the map where we happen to be. I think that would be fun. We'll do that for the pre-show, just to make sure you can get in and do those things. Hello, London, and Nigeria is here, and the Philippines, Manila. Thank you for being here. There's Baltimore, Maryland, my Maryland. Hey, Tampa, Florida. Some more Floridians checking in. Good to have you here. San Mateo is here. South Carolina is here. I used to have South Carolina as a territory, so I would be all over South Carolina doing normal working things. That's how it sort of works out for me anyway. We have a lot to work on today. I've got all new questions. They're sort of in this newer system, so I'm looking forward to trying this out. It's going to be really, really good. You can already see it if you go to professormesser.com/QA, that thing. If you go there, there should be the question already there. It should be working. You do have to put in your name, but I don't really care about that part. It's really there so that you can ask questions, because I'm not going to provide any names, or it's the same as YouTube anyway, where your names pop up. You'll just have to put in a name there. And please make them appropriate names. That would be nice. Thank you. That is one of those things we do have to work through, but I think that only shows up in the Q&A that we do. And the app that's with this one is pretty good. You can see the instructions on how to use the app. Let's see if I can get this going. Yeah, there we go. So some of these are working. Does this work if I put, the problem is if I can't put my little head there, I'm going to have to move myself somewhere else for the questions, because I can't see myself on the questions. See, I've already run into something I need to change. There's always something, right? Oh, folks in the chat room, you're already popping in with the super chats. Thank you so much. It's very kind. We've got a couple that have come through. I wonder if I can make everything work the way I would want it to work. Let's see if it does. It does. Ace Ventura. I know Ace Ventura. Thank you for the $4.99 super chat. Ace says, just drop by to say I passed my Security Plus first try this week with a 776. Great score. You are an amazing resource. Thank you for what you do for the community. And thank you also for the super chat. Congratulations on your new Security Plus certification. I think that's pretty awesome. And thank you also for supporting the other folks that are here with your super chat. Also, we have the FOO, the $4.99 super chat. It says, thank you, PM. Purchased your Security Plus practice exams. Thank you. It helped me secure that cert. Appreciate you, man. And there is a beer somewhere in there. So thank you for your $4.99 super chat as well and your support. And I love the stories. Like the story from Roxanne, who says, recently passed my A+, couldn't do it without your help. Amazing study materials. Thank you. You're absolutely welcome. I'm glad that worked out. That's one of the challenges we have. Let's put you back over here where I can see what's going on. Let's clear that. Let's do this. Let's click that. Now suddenly these weird things are popping up on my side, which I was hoping I'd be. Well, it really doesn't matter now. We're not using that for the Q&A anymore anyway. We're using this. Can I flip back and forth easily here? I think I can. Yeah, we're in good shape. Okay, so now we have 4 minutes to go. 4 minutes until the top of the hour. We'll get things started. Settle in, everybody. We've got a lot to go through. There's a $10 super chat I missed earlier, isn't it? I am so sorry, Mr. Drew. We're going to, that's worthwhile. I think we could put that up on the screen. Your content's awesome. Help me get my A+. And moving on to Network Plus, you were in the right place. Thank you for the $10 super chat, Mr. Drew. I'm not doing it. It's not working. But thank you for your support of what we do. We appreciate that. And congratulations on your A+. Hopefully you'll get some great Network Plus information here today as well. Let's put that on the left side. That would be good. And what else do we have? I think we're in pretty good shape. Everything is recording. At least whatever this turns out to be will be recorded. So at least I got that. We're working through all the details. The website's supposed to submit the answer today. It's professormesser.com/QA. Socrative will not be used today. So we're going to see how this works out, and then I'll make a decision on whether Socrative stays or does it go. For those of you on the last live stream, it didn't work so well. There were a few issues. Issues which, to my knowledge, have not been resolved yet. So I had to make a decision quickly. Oh, see how that works? Got rid of that. That's not what we want. Get rid of that. We'll get the graphics here working just a bit. I am pretty impressed with this front end, this new one that I'm using, which is Vevox. I did some testing this past week. We ran through a few scenarios. It's got the Q&A built into it, which is nice. There's some nice features there. So we'll see how this works out. Plus, you can run in a browser. It almost feels and looks identical to what you would use in an app. It works on a mobile device very nicely. So I did some extensive testing, and I went through a number of different companies that provide this type of service. So this is the one that today I have finally centered on. We're going to see how it goes. Hopefully you're able to start locking in your answer. I can't show you the poll. I can't do that because I want to show you what's there, but I can't do it unless I'll put myself on the screen. I don't want to give away the answer. And that is one of the negatives, is it tells me on this side what people are showing, what they're doing with the poll. So I can kind of see it as you're locking in your answers. But if I showed you over my shoulder, you would see it. So I've got to work on getting my talking head in the right place on the screen. But I'll work on that. There will be something to do along those lines. Okay, you do need a session ID. It will be there. You can either, I'll show you the session ID. It's going to come up when we start working on this. You can almost see it. I bet you can almost see it over my shoulder, which is the session ID. There we go. So there you go. For those of you wanting to load the app up and get the app running, because I know you people. There we go. So now it's super large. Now you can now I can't see you. Now everything is just enormous. But that number will be up when I get to the other part of the study group. Very quickly, since we got 30 seconds, Roxanne in the chat room, thank you for the $15 super chat. Roxanne says, thank you. Next, my Network Plus exam. Just got my study book yesterday. Thank you so much. How many monitors do I have? There's a lot here. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Technically an iPad. We'll say 5. 6 from a laptop computer. It's just 6. Really, there's a tiny little screen in this. Can we count that one? 7. And that's the only other LCD screen. That's all of them. But normally I'm using 2. Today we're using that many just to get a live stream going. Top of the hour. My iPad says, yes, get to work. I will. I need to start it on my side. Click the green button. That looks good. I'll give you the codes and everything in just a moment. You're going to find out really in just a moment. Let's get myself set up on here. Let's get that live stream going. And I think it's time to begin the show. Let's see if I can. Oh, where did my other piece of this go? Did I put it in the wrong place? Oh, I have to hit the wrong button. There we go. Let's do a live stream, everyone. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the July 2023 Professor Messer N10-008 Network Plus Study Group, coming to you live from our headquarters here at Messer Studios, where we do this monthly study group where I take questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives, and in real time, we go through all of them to figure out if this is something that you know, or maybe you don't know. We'll find out. It's a great opportunity to learn the materials that come directly from the exam objectives. And in the second hour, I will open up the lines or open up the chat for some Q&A. So I've got a little bit of that to go through as well. We've got a lot of things to step through today. I am challenged by making all of these things work. We're going to find out how well things go today. I want you to be able, if you are here live, to participate with the rest of us. And the way that you would do that is you would pop open a new browser window and you would go to this URL. It is professormesser.com/QA. That is the URL. There's also an app that you can get for this. For this particular live stream that we are on, the app has changed a bit. So if you've been with us on previous live streams, you'll notice the old app is not showing you a question. Well, there's a new app, and you can get it from your favorite app store. You want to get the Vevox app. Vevox is the app. Get it from your favorite app store, and it will ask you, if you use the app, for a session ID. I put the session ID here on the screen. It's 101-962-405, but that will be also on the screen in just a moment anyway. So once the slide goes away, it's okay. You will be able to see exactly what's going on. The question that you will have if you follow that on the screen is this question that asks, a router interface is showing a large number of CRC errors. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for these errors? Is it an incorrect speed, a faulty cable, invalid authentication, outdated firmware, or incorrect VLAN assignment? Now, the rules that we have set up that we always abide by is that we do not put answers in the chat room. We do not put any hints in the chat room. Instead, we want to go to our link at professormesser.com/QA, which is right there, or you can use the app and use the ID that goes along with that app. So it's whichever one makes sense for you, whichever one you would like to use. We're going to come back to this question in just a moment. It's our rewind question from last month. We're going to come back to that and see how you answered that particular question. Well, thank you for being here. We do one of these study groups every month. This particular study group is about Network Plus, and the current version of Network Plus is the N10-008. When we are not here doing one of these live streams, all of our Network Plus training materials can be found on YouTube at professormesser.com/YouTube. We also have weekly pop quiz questions for Network Plus. You'll find those on Twitter at professormesser.com/Twitter. And you can, of course, do that on Instagram as well at professormesser.com/Instagram. Now, for those of you that have been watching the Network Plus over time, you know that our current version is the N10-008. It was released on September the 15th of 2021, which means it will probably be retired somewhere around March of 2025. What that means for you right now is that if you are currently working towards earning your Network Plus, you're studying the N10-008 materials, you've got plenty of time. You've got until March of 2025, so that's pretty good. When you take the exam, it will give you 90 minutes to take the entire exam. You could get a maximum of 90 questions. You could get fewer than 90 questions, and you need to earn a score of 720 on a scale from 100 to 900. I know it's a little odd the way that everything is scaled and marked and finally graded, but that is how CompTIA tends to do their exams. It's just something where you do the best you can on the exam, and whatever the score turns out to be at the end, hopefully it's going to be over a 720. You earn a number of different things. One is multiple choice questions, and you might also get performance-based questions. We'll talk about performance-based questions in just a moment and see what those might mean for you. There's quite a bit to go through on this exam. And what I tried to make for you is put all of my videos on YouTube and have them available to you immediately. So you've got a lot of things that you can watch right out of the gate. There's no registration. Everything is there on YouTube that you need to see. But I also have other materials like my course notes and other things that you might need. Those are all on my website. I have both physical and digital versions of those, and I bundle everything into one single bundle called my Success Bundle. You can find that at professormesser.com/netsuccess, and it tells you everything that happens to be in there for the Success Bundle. You'll know all of the things, the individual components that are included with that. Find it on my website at professormesser.com. Also let you know that we do have a replay of this available immediately after we're done on YouTube. I also create an audio-only replay that is available in a podcast format. That's usually posted sometimes the same day, sometimes the day after, but you can have it automatically downloaded into your podcast app by following the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/podcast or go to your favorite podcast listening program, and you can search for Professor Messer. If you're already on working through a lot of the details on Apple, if you're on Google Podcasts, if you are on Spotify, if you're on a lot of different streaming services, our podcast is there as well. So you've got a little bit more that you can work through. Find that podcast link at professormesser.com/podcast. Also, we have our video that's available of this replay. As I mentioned, it's available immediately afterwards. I hit the stop button. YouTube takes a few minutes to process it, and then it's available for anyone to watch. But about a day later, almost by magic, but it's not really magic. It's my marketing manager, Lori. She's watching this replay. Hi, Lori. She's going through this at about 2x speed and putting down all of the timestamps into the YouTube video description so you can see these little chapters that are set up in the video that might help you find what you're looking for just a little bit faster. So you've got a few things to work through there, and hopefully if you show up about a day later, you'll see that in the YouTube video description, all of these linkable answer question, detailed timestamps are all there. You'll be able to find exactly what you're looking for. Thanks, Lori, for doing that. Also, we'll let you know that when we're not here live, we are always over on Discord, it seems, 24/7. I do have to sleep at some point, but most of the time, you will find me there. It's a good place to send me an instant message. There's lots of people there studying for their A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus certifications. People are starting live streams themselves into our chat rooms. You click one button, it opens a chat that many people can go in there and work through that. So this is very good if you're working through this. It's something that might really, really help for what you're working on. And it's always a good place to talk with other people who are studying. You can join us at professormesser.com/Discord. That is the invite to the Discord. It's open for everybody. If you have any questions, you can always let me know on my website. I'll be glad to redirect you over there to the proper Discord link. Eventually, you are going to need to take your exam. And if you are in the US or Canada, you might want to save a few dollars when you purchase your exam sitting. You do that by purchasing a discounted voucher from the Professor Messer website. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers, and you can join, have a look at, see what's there, and easily step through what all of those things might be. You know, one of the ways that I focus on vouchers is that something you have to be able to get through your exam. But one of the things you don't get in other sites are things that might help you. For example, there is an Exam Hacks ebook that I wrote, and if you purchase my voucher, my discounted voucher from my site, I'll give you a free copy of that Exam Hacks ebook. Something you can't purchase, it's only available with my Success Bundles or when you get a voucher. There's also nothing you have to do to get the discounted rate. The discount is already built in on my website. You don't need a discount code. You don't have to play any games with finding a code on some third-party site. You don't have to load any extensions into your browser. All that's just crazy. Instead, simply visit professormesser.com/vouchers, and every voucher there is already discounted. Again, unfortunately, only available in the U.S. or Canada at the moment. We are working on ways to hopefully bring that to the rest of the world sometime in the future. So let's talk about this question we saw earlier, which is a router interface is showing a large number of CRC errors. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for these errors? Is it an incorrect speed, a faulty cable, an invalid authentication, outdated firmware, or an incorrect VLAN assignment? And let's see, this is the clunky part where I think I can show the results from here. I cannot. So I can show the results on my screen. Oh, I think I can. I think I can show the results from right here. And the results are, we have 61. I don't know that I need the detailed percentages down to the 100th level, but approximately 61% of you say it's a faulty cable. We've got 12% that said invalid authentication, 10% outdated firmware, and 5% incorrect speed. Oh, 9% said incorrect VLAN assignment. So this is one of the things that we looked at last month, and maybe we didn't do so great with understanding where these types of errors would come from. Interface errors can be many and varied, though. So you've got a few things you can work through. If you've ever looked at the different statistics that are available, one would be runts. You might also have giants, but our question was specific to a cyclic redundancy check. This is one that looks at all of the data in the frame, and if any one of those bits has been flipped, the entire frame is thrown out because it has been corrupted. The way that we're able to tell that something went wrong is we perform this CRC check, and if the CRC check that we perform does not match the CRC that is already embedded into the frame, we throw the frame out. So that's how all of this works. It's really a last check to make sure that what we receive is proper to what was sent on the other side. So you've got a few things to look at. Most of the time, this is a physical level problem that is shown to us by tests that we do at layer 2. So it's almost like an OSI layer 1 and 2 is where we really focus with the CRC error. This is probably a bad cable. It could be a bad interface. It could be anything that causes that signal to not work or appear properly in the frames that we are working on. And indeed, a faulty cable is what 67% of you, about 2/3 of you said that is what we would use. We have other folks in here that say 12% said invalid authentication. And if you log in with the wrong username and password, it is an error, but it's not a CRC error. So we would throw that one out. We've got outdated firmware, which could indeed cause problems with the operation of a device, but by itself is not going to cause a CRC error. We've got an incorrect speed, which would certainly cause us a problem. We probably would not even be able to connect if the speed was incorrect. So you'd never see CRC errors because you'd never be able to correct. And then you've got an incorrect VLAN assignment, which certainly changes what you can access and what IP subnet you happen to be on. It won't create any CRC errors for you. The only answer here, the best answer here, is the one that says faulty cable, and about 70% of you say that faulty cable is indeed the answer that we were hoping for. You're absolutely right. That is the answer that we would like to see. And if you got that one right, then you either remembered what we did last month, or perhaps it's something that you knew right off the bat. So congratulations. A good number of folks knew that faulty cable was the answer that we were looking for. And there, we've now done our first question on the new Vevox front end. Everything so far working pretty well, working okay. I think it's something that we can work with. We're going to do a little bit of additional testing with that once we're done here. We have another study group on Thursday. You can come back and see if we were able to make any changes then. So you never know. Well, now that we've got that first question down, one of the things that I would like to do, I'm going to stop this poll really quick on your side. You'll see a message indeed there now that it's stopped and we're looking at the correct answer. So now you can see where that particular answer came from. That's another thing that you can focus on your Vevox front end, be able to see those. So I want to also give you another perspective. Let's hide this particular poll and get that out of the way. I want to give you a perspective of what you would run into when you take the actual exam. So that's the thing, that when we sit down and take the exam, the first handful of questions you get on the exam are questions that are not multiple choice. You know, the one we just looked at was a multiple choice question where you had a question and then multiple opportunities, multiple choices to select from. But for your exam, you are going to find that the first handful of questions are not multiple choice. CompTIA calls these performance-based questions, but in reality, they are just questions that are just written in a different way other than multiple choice. They might be drag and drop. They might be fill in the blank. They may put you at a command prompt and ask you to perform a function. It might be a matching question, or you have to put things in a particular order. You've got a lot of different things that this could possibly be. So I have for you today a performance-based question. So the performance-based question I have for you today is a matching question. We can sort of see it on the screen with my head in the corner. I think we'll be able to make it work for you. I'll put this up so that I know it doesn't look exactly well structured on the screen. But again, this is sort of our shakedown cruise for the new Q&A here. But if you look at the screen, it makes a little more sense. I want you to match the command line tool to the function that I have listed here. The command line tool, the tools that I have are on the right side. The functions are on the left. I have 4 functions and 7 different command line tools that are listed. So this will not be a one-to-one. You'll have some things left over at the end. Maybe for extra credit, we'll try to figure out what you could do with the tools that we have left over at the end. So let's step through each one of these. The first function is access the command line of a remote device. What tool would we use for that? Associate a device's MAC address with an IP address. Identify open ports on a remote server and view the subnet mask of a Linux computer. So I have 7 different command lines that we could choose from. They are nmap, route, telnet, hostname, ifconfig, arp, and nslookup. Now, if you already think they're in the right order, you can simply put in 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D because it's a fill in the blank that we have here. But hopefully you can get an idea that's in here of what we're really looking for with each one of these functions. And in fact, this is sort of what the actual exam is looking for, is they want you to understand not what the function necessarily is, but how you would use it. So for those of you listening on the podcast side, let me go through these again. We've got nmap, route, telnet, hostname, ifconfig, arp, and nslookup. And the 4 different functions are access the command line of a remote device. Which one of those command lines would fit? Associate a device's MAC address with an IP address. Which one would we use? Identify open ports on a Linux server. And view the subnet mask of a Linux computer. A number of you are putting in your answers. I see them coming in much quicker now. This is something, there is no Googling. You may not Google. Of course, no answers in the chat room, please. We're going to put all of our answers right here in our front end. Hopefully, if you can follow that link at professormesser.com/QA. I've got, let's see if I can bring up the actual screen of this. I know the screen doesn't look so great. I've got to work on the formatting a bit. I've got, this was done in very short notice. Can you tell? I put everything together and then hopefully I was hoping that this would all work out for us. It seems to be, though. It's working fine on my side. Hopefully it's working okay on your side as well. Put in those answers and you can see that we're doing this either at professormesser.com/QA, or you can go to vevox.app, vevox.app, and it will ask for an ID. That ID number is 101-962-405. That's a toll-free number anywhere in the United States. That is the number you would plug in to get active in Vevox and be able to answer this particular question. A lot of you are putting these answers in pretty quick. Makes me think that some of you know this one pretty cold. I don't have a way to check for this particular question. I will in the future, though. There's some really good features in Vevox we're not even using yet. So we'll get some of those going for the next study group. It should be kind of fun. to step through those. So let's see how you did with this one. Let's step through each one of these. We'll start with the very first one on our list, which is access the command line of a remote device. Now, normally I would use SSH to look at the command line of a remote device, but if you look at the list, SSH is not there. There is no SSH in this list, so you may have had to do a quick double check to see which one you would use, and hopefully you chose the answer C. Telnet is the right answer. That's what we were hoping. Now, ideally, you would not be using Telnet, but that was the only choice available in our list. Obviously, we wouldn't use Telnet because all of the communication that Telnet uses by default is all in the clear. Someone would be able to capture those packets and see everything that you're sending and receiving from that device, which is why we use SSH. Secure shell, which is what SSH is, encrypts all of that data. But for the purposes of this question and for the purposes of your Network Plus, you do need to know both of these and what the advantages and disadvantages are of both. Next on our list is associate a device's MAC address with an IP address. MAC address and IP address, we would use the ARP command. ARP stands for Address Resolution Protocol. It's both a protocol and a command you could use at the command line to view the information that is stored on your machine associated with the ARP protocol itself. So that is one that if you go through my video and detail what these might be, that is a pretty good one to step through. So hopefully this is one that that can help you a little bit with determining what IP address is associated with that MAC address and vice versa. Third on our list is identify open ports on a remote server. And if you worked at all with anything relating to IT security, then you've probably used the network mapper or Nmap to be able to poll a machine and see what ports might be open, what ports might be closed, or what ports might be filtered by a firewall. You can determine that and many other things using Nmap. It's a remarkably flexible and powerful program. And if you're doing anything in IT security, you will be using Nmap. If you're not using Nmap, you're already at a disadvantage. It's such a powerful utility to use. And last on our list, next to last, sort of last, is number 4, view the subnet mask of a Linux computer. Well, if we're sitting on a Linux computer, then we would use the command line ifconfig, which is a Linux command. That is the one you have to know for your Network Plus. There are newer commands that Linux tends to use. The IP command is a pretty good example of that. But for the purposes of your Network Plus, and indeed for really most Linux distributions that you sit down to use, the if command will be available for you. That is a good one to be able to see the IP address, subnet mask, and other networking details on your Linux device. Well, that means there were a number of answers we did not have a match for. They are route, host name, and NSLOOKUP. So the route command is another one of those commands that describes what we're gathering, which is a series of routes that are stored on our device. Every device connected to the network has its own routing table. And most operating systems have a route command that allows you to see this routing table. So that's what I would use if I wanted to view the routing table of a device. I would use the route command. I can also add and remove routes using the route command as well. I do that in my studio all the time when I'm testing different links. Next on our list is hostname. What would we use hostname for? Well, just like the name implies, it tells you the name of the host, which you think would not be necessary. If we're typing on a machine, wouldn't we know what machine we're connecting to and using? Well, you obviously have not worked a lot in troubleshooting on a network, because you will not have one screen up. You will have many different windows on your screen connected to many different routers, switches, firewalls, and other things. All at the command line, they all look very similar, and it will be very easy for you to forget, now which window is this? What am I connected to? What command line does this happen to be? I know, I'll just type the word host name, and it will tell me what host I'm currently typing on. It's almost like magic. It certainly can save a lot of problems, especially when you're worrying about, oh, we're going to restart this machine now. Let me do a shutdown. Oh, wait. Am I in the right window? Let's do a host name and make sure that I'm shutting down the right host or restarting the right host. And lastly on our list is NSLOOKUP. NSLOOKUP is the name service or name server lookup, where we query a name server to be able to gather information that is stored in the database of that name server. So if you need to query a DNS server to look for a particular name or a particular IP address or find the email server for a particular domain, and many, many other things, you would use the NSLOOKUP command. You could also use the dig command to perform that same function, but in our list of things, dig is not there. NSLOOKUP was there, and that is what we would use to query a DNS server. So accessing the command line of a remote device would be telnet. Associating a device's MAC address with an IP address would be ARP. Identifying open ports on a remote server is perfect for nmap and viewing the subnet mask of a Linux computer if config. And we had route, hostname, and NSLOOKUP left. As we were done, that is our answers for this particular question. Hopefully that gave you some perspective of what you would have here. I did not want to see everybody's answers on there, but you could see we got a number of folks that were locking in their answers to see what was on the screen. Hopefully you did pretty well with that one. Some folks were asking earlier, if you got some of them right and some of them wrong, do you get partial credit? CompTIA does have a frequently asked questions file on their website where they've said sometimes. Sometimes you get partial credit. Sometimes you don't get partial credit, but they don't tell you when. That's the real challenge. So I just say, don't worry about it. Don't even concern yourself on whether you're getting partial credit or not. Just do the best you can. And the final score is going to work itself out at the end. So you just never know. They really don't tell you a lot about the scoring. When I say that CompTIA doesn't share any information about the scoring, they don't share any information about the scoring. You know nothing. So don't worry yourself with it. Don't concern yourself with the scoring. Don't even... There's nothing to game there. So there's no strategies you can apply really, because you have no idea what a particular score is going to require or a particular question might score you. So don't worry about that part. Just do the best you can. Now that we've done this performance-based question, and by the way, I looked through the answers that folks were sending in. You did an exceptional job with that one. I want to give you, we want to go back to the multiple choice-based questions and see how we do with those. Next on our list is this multiple choice-based question that asks, a packet capture shows that every SYN request sent by a laptop returns a FIN from the server. Which of the following OSI layer would be most associated with this issue? Would it be layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, or layer 7? We have 5 choices to choose from. A packet capture shows that every SYN request sent by a laptop returns a FIN from the server. Which of the following OSI layer would be most associated with this issue? Would it be layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, or layer 7? There were a lot of people jumping in there really quick to be able to do that. So I think that was a really good example of how folks are jumping in to get the right answers on these. So thank you so much for that. Hopefully you got the right answer. Some folks were even saying, I locked in my answer, I can't go back. Well, that's actually how it's always been. So we'll have to work through the other ones that we have there. I think that's really where we want to focus, is also getting the details of what this might be. And I will go through some of these answers. If you think you know the answer, please use the links on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to lock in your answer and see if you happen to know what it is. Please don't use the chat room. Please no answers there. Please no hints in the chat room either. We're going to figure out the details as we go through this. Don't worry. We will find out what the answer of this one happens to be. So I've got a number of different ones to step through. I see a number of people putting in their answers here. This is great stuff. So I really need to have my secondary screen on the other side, don't I? Let's see if you know the answer to this one. OSI layer problems are a lot like this. They don't ask you a lot of trivia questions where it's a direct. They don't ask you what is the name of the layer associated with layer 2. They don't ask you that. Instead, it's a question like this where you have to understand how the different layers operate. Again, CompTIA is very big on understanding why you would use these technologies and how you would use these technologies, and not necessarily a definition acronym type scenario. So hopefully that's something that you're familiar with. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, a packet capture shows that every SYN request sent by a laptop returns a FIN from the server. Which of the following OSI layer would be the most associated with this issue? Is it layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, or layer 7. And if we lock in our answer, let's see what the answers might be. Wow, we got a big mix. In fact, we did not go over 50% for these. Layer 4 got 45%. Layer 3 got 33%. Layer 2 at about 12%. Layer 7 at 6%. And then layer 1 got just almost just over 1%, almost 2%. Not a lot there at all, single digits. But if we go with the plurality of you, layer 4 is what most people chose for this one. And because we were talking about the sins and the fins, that means we must be talking about TCP. And if we're talking about TCP, then we are at layer 4, the transport layer. So that is what we were hoping to find on these, is the answer layer 4. In fact, almost 50% of you now that I've given the answer, have said, oh, it's layer 4. Of course it's layer 4. We knew it was layer 4. So you've got all of these, a screen. You're cutting the screen up into little pieces. You're pushing it through the network. And on the other side, it's putting all of those pieces back together. That is what TCP does at layer 4, our transport layer. You'll often find both TCP, which is our transmission control protocol, and UDP, our user datagram protocol, are both layer 4 protocols. So anytime you see a question that has a reference to anything associated with TCP or UDP, we're talking about layer 4. And indeed, now 50% of you, remarkably, the number has gone up on layer 4. That's exactly where it went. So I think that's a very good example, though, of where you would find the right things to choose from. If you see anything relating to TCP or UDP, it's layer 4. Now, in this question, interestingly enough, there was no mention of TCP or UDP. It really isn't that interesting. I intentionally wrote the question so it would not have TCP and UDP in it. You had to know that a SYN and a FIN are related to TCP. Therefore, TCP is what we were talking about. Therefore, it's layer 4. So it's a couple of steps to finally get to that point, but that is the answer we were looking at. That is what we were hoping to find. Indeed, that is the correct answer. Now, if we were dealing with a problem at a physical layer of getting signal from one side of the network to the other, then it would be a layer 1 problem. If we were having problems with a switch being able to send information to the correct MAC address, that is something that all happens at layer 2. If our problem was related to an IP address, a subnet mask, a default gateway, or anything relating to IP addresses, we would put it into the layer 3 category. And if we were finally talking about the way an application is performing, we're looking at a login screen, we're seeing messages from an application, then it is something that's happening at layer 7. So in this case, because we're talking about SYN and FIN, the only answer that really makes any sense is indeed layer 4. And now 54% of you got that one absolutely correct. That is hopefully what you got as well. You guys did pretty well with this one. I think you were spot on. And a good number of you did get that right. If you didn't, that's okay. Now you know a little bit more about the OSI layers. Let's do another question. Our next question on our list, I'm going to bring up that one. And here it is. This question asks, a routing table includes 2 different routes to the same IP subnet. Which does the router choose when forwarding the packet? Does it choose the route listed first in the routing table, the route interface with the smallest MAC address, the route will be selected randomly for each connection, the route with the lowest administrative distance, or the route with the most recent update? Let's do the question again. The question asks, a routing table includes 2 different routes to the same IP subnet. Which does the router choose when forwarding the packet? Does it choose the route listed first in the routing table, the route interface with the smallest MAC address, the route will be selected randomly for each connection, the route with the lowest administrative distance, or the route with the most recent update? If you think you know the answer, you can lock in your answer right there. I guess I should put it on the screen, professormesser.com/QA, or use the Vevox app and the details that are here on the left side of your screen, or use that little cute QR code that's right there on the screen as well. That will also take you to the right web page. Hopefully these will all work for you. I don't tend to do QR codes in the wild. I have to really trust that QR code is going to a safe place. And I can tell you that QR code is going to a safe place. It's been checked and verified. It's there. It's put there automatically by Vevox. So if that helps, it's not one that I put into the list. Nobody snuck in and changed the QR code. It's a real good QR code. So you can use that as well. Number of you've locked in your answers on this one. So let's see how you did with this one. The question again asked, a routing table includes two different routes to the same IP subnet. Which does the router choose when forwarding the packet? Does it choose the route listed first in the routing table, the route interface with the smallest MAC address, the route will be selected randomly for each connection, the route with the lowest administrative distance, or the route with the most recent update? And let's see how you did. I can't wait. Here it is. And we see that 71% of you say it's the route with the lowest administrative distance, but 20% of you say it's the route listed first in the routing table. You've got a number of different options here as well. The route interface with the smallest MAC address got 0%. The route selected randomly. Wouldn't that be a great routing table? Just randomly sent you somewhere. Less than 2% say that one. The route with the most recent update, 5% of you said, but it's not really the most recent update we're dealing with. 73% of you say it's administrative distance, and that's because you know that the routes that are in your routing table do have an administrative distance associated with them, especially if it's two routes to the same network. And that is really the key part of this, is understanding when these different routes come in from different places, where do I go with this? One route came from an EIGRP. One route came from OSPF. Now I have to choose one in this list. And I gave you 5 different answers because there's different ways of choosing the route depending on the scenario. But for this particular case, there really was only one in the list that you could have chosen from. Some folks in the chat room were even talking about metrics and other things, but we didn't talk about metrics in the answers because I did not want there to be any confusion about that. There was one clear answer, and it dealt with administrative distance. That is what your router is going to use to determine which router protocol is more important than another. And it will choose the one that is more important. Those administrative distances are set by default. You could administratively change those if you're crazy. Quite honestly, it's difficult enough to remember administrative distances and the defaults because those tend to change from different manufacturers. Also, if you start changing them, then there's another set of administrative distances, and you would have to make sure that all of your routers are changed that way. We generally never change the administrative distance unless there's a really, 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 really good reason. Most of these are in pretty good shape. There may be certain protocols you like more than another, and you should change the distances if that's the case, but often it adds more complexity when you start modifying what the defaults happen to be, especially with something like this. So it's good to go into the router to see how the configuration might be, especially when the same route is being advertised by different routing protocols. So in this case, the administrative distance is indeed the answer we were looking for. The routing table does not list these in any particular order. In fact, the routing table may be different depending on the operating system or the device you're using. The order of the routing table really doesn't mean anything. What we are looking for is the most specific route that happens to exist in the routing table. So what's listed first and what's listed last does not matter. What we want to know is which is the route that is most specific. In this case, it's both of them are pretty specific. It's two routes to the same IP subnet. The IP subnet is identical. So now we have two routes in the routing table that are effectively the same. They just came in from different locations. And so we would use the administrative distance to effectively break the tie. The route interface with the smallest MAC address is not part of the decision-making process. So it's just something I put on the screen to fill up one of these options here. The route will be selected randomly for each connection. As I mentioned, that would be something, wouldn't it? If it was just random routing. We should do that one day. We'll have random route internet. We'll see what happens. We'll see where your packets end up. And then lastly, the route with the most recent update, although that might be a more accurate route for the particular IP subnet that's being advertised, just because it was updated most recently doesn't mean that the older routes are any less accurate. So the age of the route doesn't really matter. What really matters is what is in the routing table right now and which one of these routes is going to get priority when it's finally put into the routing table. And it is indeed associated with administrative distance. If you answered that fourth option, the route with the lowest administrative distance, you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. Wow, we've already stepped through a series of questions, all of them very different, dealing with OSI layers, dealing with troubleshooting, dealing with routing tables. There's so much to know for the Network Plus exam. And in fact, if you look at my course, you know that the Network Plus course has 93 videos in it, over 14 hours of information in all of those videos. And although it would be great if you had 14 hours and you could sit down and read and watch every single one of those videos, I know that sometimes life gets in the way. You don't have time to do all of that. Well, there's so many different topics. It would be nice if we had some way to get a summary of everything that was in every single one of these videos. And in fact, there is. You get that summary through my course notes. This is a set of notes where I've gone through every single video. I pull out all of the text from those videos. I pull out all of the important graphics, all the important pictures, all of the important charts, and I have them in one single document. These are my course notes. They're available in both a digital form and a physical form. They're, of course, identical in both forms, but if you purchase the physical form, I'll provide you the digital form for free, so you can download the digital immediately, and then you can simply use the book when it arrives in the mail, hopefully very quickly, depending on where you are. We do ship anywhere in the world, so it's another way that you can get all of this information at a glance, something that is summarized for you, something where you know it is comprehensive, it hasn't missed anything from these videos. It's all in the course notes, and it's another great way to support what we do here. You can find out more about the course notes. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/NPCN for Network Plus course notes. All right, back to the live stream, everybody. Let's do another question. The next question on my list, I'm going to try to bring up the right thing on my screen so that I can do this as well. Our next question is, a user is complaining of slow response time. Interface statistics on the switch show an increasing number of late collisions. Which of the following is the most likely reason for these issues? Is it an incorrect VLAN setting, an invalid default gateway, the DNS server is down, VoIP traffic has priority, or a duplex mismatch? A user is complaining of slow response time. Interface statistics on the switch show an increasing number of late collisions. Which of the following is the most likely reason for these issues? Is it an incorrect VLAN setting, an invalid default gateway, the DNS server is down, VoIP traffic has priority, or a duplex mismatch? Now, if you think you know the answer, go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You can't really see the question if I do that. There we go. Now we can get your question there, so you're able to make that happen. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. I'll put the link right there on the screen for you. A user complaining of slow response time. This is perhaps the number one reported issue for the network team. And it's usually the network is slow, network slow, slow network, network slow. It's either the network is slow or the internet is down. the entire internet. Yes, it's the whole thing. It's just all down. But most of the time it's a response time problem. And of course, now that means we have to sort of drill down into what a response time problem might be from that particular user's perspective. Yesterday it was 5 seconds and today it's 6 seconds. Is that really a network response time problem? Or is this something else we need to look for? So that's where we would kind of focus on our troubleshooting and know what we would do on this particular network. Hopefully you know what you would do. We have a number of troubleshooting tasks that we document in our Network Plus course. Maybe this is giving you an idea of something you can use as well. Lock in your answer. A number of you already have. I think we should figure out what the right answer is. The question again asked, a user is complaining of slow response time. Interface statistics on the switch show an increasing number of late collisions. Which of the following is the most likely reason for these issues? Is it an incorrect VLAN setting, an invalid default gateway, the DNS server is down, VoIP traffic has priority, or a duplex mismatch? Well, let's see how you did. We have 71%, another very large number, say a duplex mismatch. We also have 13% that say voice over IP traffic has priority, which could certainly be somewhat of a problem, but we'll talk more about that in a moment. And then with exactly the same, a three-way tie with 4.32% of the score is incorrect VLAN setting, an invalid default gateway, and the DNS server is down. So there's a really good example of what we would do or what we would look at to try to figure out where slow response time would come from. And you can see that a very large number of you say duplex mismatch is what would do that. Well, would it? Would that really be where we would focus? Well, obviously, if we're concerned about the performance, we may want to look at the statistics that are associated with our interfaces. Are we getting interface problems? Are we seeing issues? In fact, if we see late collisions, that is a statistic that you would commonly see associated with an interface. And if you're getting a problem with slowdowns, that it was fine and now things are going slowly, it could be that a user is connecting to a switch, but the duplex is mismatched to what the switch is providing. So the switch may be set to full duplex, but your local machine may be set to half duplex. And if that happens, you will be able to communicate. You'll have connectivity. You can go to Google, you can search things, but you'll see a sluggishness. And you'll see statistics, especially late collision counters, that will continue to accumulate over time because one side thinks it's running full duplex and is just sending data without any care in the world. The other side is set to half duplex and is sending out and slowing things down depending on whether other traffic may be on the network at the same time. So duplex mismatch can absolutely be an issue. I would run into this all the time when putting new equipment onto the network. Let's say we got a brand new firewall. It's a firewall that sits in between an existing connection. We break the link, we put the firewall in the middle, and then suddenly we see there's poor response time. And then if we go back and look, we can see the firewall set to one duplex, the switch set to a different one. We correct that mismatch, and now suddenly everything's working properly. So that is another very good example of where half duplex and full duplex do not play well together, and it can certainly cause slowdowns on the network. And if you answered duplex mismatch, you got that one absolutely right. Now, the questions we saw earlier, VoIP traffic has priority, which if you're doing any type of QoS, quality of service on your network, then voice over IP traffic probably does have priority. But VoIP traffic is a very, very low amount of traffic on the network, relatively speaking. Voice communication really doesn't take up much bandwidth. And so making it a higher priority does not, almost never, causes any type of performance problem or perceivable performance problem with the data that's riding underneath that voice over IP traffic. You would not have so much VoIP traffic that you would not be able to send or receive data. It certainly would not be the most likely reason, which is what this question is asking you for. We have a DNS servers down. I thought the problem was always DNS. Is it not? DNS servers being down would cause us to not be able to communicate at all. Would not be a slow response time issue. It would be us not being able to connect issue. Invalid default gateway, a similar problem where we do not have a proper gateway to be able to get off of this network and communicate with other devices. It's a binary issue. We either are connected or not connected. It would not cause a slow response time. And an incorrect VLAN setting would put us on the wrong IP subnet, but would not cause performance problems. It would not slow everything down. The only one of these answers that would be the most likely reason for a slow response time is by far duplex mismatch. And I think a number of you knew that that would be the case. That's your answer, and that is the right one that you should choose from. Duplex mismatch, to have that there. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I'd like to send you an email that qualifies or certifies that you were watching this video and you have earned a 1-hour webinar category CEU. You have to follow these directions to be able to earn the CEU. However, the questions or the path or the process you should step through is one where you are going to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. You're going to the Contact Us link on my website. Click that link. It will bring up a form. Put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, put July 2023 Network Plus or something like that, so I know what study group this came from. And in the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code word of the month, interface monitoring. That is your super secret code word of the month, or code words of the month. Interface monitoring are the super secret code words of the month. So plug in those as the super secret code word. If you'd like to put anything else in this message, you're certainly welcome to. I do read through every single one of these. If you don't want to put anything, that's fine too. I know exactly what to do with these. It's not a problem. I will take your submission, and in about a week, I turn these around and send you an email that certifies that indeed you must have been here. Now, technically, you don't need that email to put this down as a webinar category CEU, but if CompTIA wants to audit all of these CEUs that you've accumulated, you've got proof. So they can't say that you weren't here because I sent you the message. I digitally signed the message. You can't create the message yourself. It's another one of those things it's foolproof. I will make sure that you get credit for this, and it's a good way to watch as that's going. So let's keep going with this. I'm going to hide these results. You'll notice that in the app that you are using, you can put in a number of different options in here for Q&A, and there's a link in the app or the page that you are using with a couple of chat bubbles. You can submit questions for the after show. That might be something you want to do. But in the meantime, we've got time for more questions. So let's do another question. I have this one. Since this is something we might want to know, which of the following would describe the foundational principles of the CIA triad? Would it be cryptography, integrity, and accessibility? Would it be connectivity, interactivity, and authentication? Would it be confidentiality, integrity, and availability? Would it be control, interface, and accounting? Or would it be certificates, infrastructure, and access controls? Now, I realize this is a bit of a definitional question, but I think it'd be a good chance for us to remember what exactly that CIA triad happens to be. If you think you know the answer, there's your link. Go to professormesser.com/QA and break down the answer right there. Put it in. See if you can figure out what the details are. Should be an answer. Yeah, it's all of the above. I think that's the right. I don't think that's the right answer. That would not be the one we would use. We'll have to figure out what the answer would be with these. As always, of course, no answers in the chat room. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer, please. We'll have to figure out what those happen to be. It is not the Central Intelligence Agency, those of you here in the United States. We'll have to figure out what those, a lot of you coming up with some really good answers here. I needed you when I was putting this question together. So hopefully you know what the foundational principles might be for the CIA triad. I need to fix my picture in a picture so it fits on the page here. I will get that done for the next one. We'll figure out a way to do that. I don't know how to do that. We'll figure it out. It's one of these mini buttons. So those of you that I've got to figure out which button manages the picture in a picture thing. We'll figure out the details. Don't worry. I've got options. I've got people that can do this for me. There's no one that can do this for me. We'll figure it out. Let's see how you did. A number of you have answered this one. We can break this one down. The answer is, or the question is, which of the following would describe the foundational principles of the CIA triad? Would it be cryptography, integrity, and would it be cryptography, integrity, and accessibility? Would it be connectivity, interactivity, and authentication? Would it be confidentiality, integrity, and availability? Would it be control, interface, and accounting? Or would it be certificates, infrastructure, and access controls? Oof. I'm going to remember to do an easier stated question next time. What answer would we choose for this? Well, the CIA triad. First, let's see what you chose. So we'll see which ones we're dealing with here. By far, 84% of you say it is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Let's see if that is what it is. Let's see the CIA triad. There it is. It is indeed confidentiality, integrity, and availability. There's the C, there's the I, and there's the A. That is something you'll see often. Interesting, we used to call it, did we call it the IAC triad? We called it certainly one of the different ones. We didn't use the CIA because we didn't want it to be confused with the United States federal government agency, the Central Intelligence Agency. But then we realized, well, it's so much easier to remember when you just say CIA. So we just decided, I guess as an industry, let's say CIA. And so that's what we've tended to do. So indeed, it is the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. You need all three of those if you're doing security. Those are the important ones that we have to worry about, is all three of those. Hopefully that's what you chose. A number of you locked those down. I'm going to stop the poll and we'll show you that the correct answer is there. And in fact, you can also see the link to the video that is associated with this particular question. So we've got that on the screen. You're able to see, at least on your Vevox screen, for those of you that are watching this. For those of you that are watching the live stream, it's right here. So we got all of that from the N10-008 section 4.1, and the video name is the CIA triad. That's what we were hoping for, and you got a good number on that. 85% of you did really, really well on that one. Well, we've got time to fit another question in. I want to do this, so let's do another question. The next one on our list asks, a laptop's Ethernet connection is performing slower than expected. Another one of these slowdown problems. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Would it be a duplex mismatch, jumbo frames, spanning tree, speed mismatch, or WPA3 enabled? Now, if you think you know the answer, make sure you really check it. If you've been paying attention, this is one of those I throw in to see, are you really paying attention? Let's find out. It's another one of these questions where things are slow, but this could be something expected or unexpected. We're going to find out and see if we can figure out the details of this. A laptop's Ethernet connection is performing slower than expected. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? A duplex mismatch, jumbo frames, spanning tree, a speed mismatch, or WPA3 enabled? If you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA, lock in your answer, or use the Vevox app with the information you see on the screen here. I see a number of you already locking this one in. I hope you got this one right. This is one I'm really hoping we were able to get this one right. Let's see if you did. The ones, in fact, if we look at this list, and all five of these things are things we really do need to know for our exam, and all five of these things have certain performance questions that we need to have answered. I don't want to give any more away than that. So all of them could have something to do with performance or connectivity or availability. Here's where we would figure it out. Lock in your answer, see how you do with this one. A number of you are putting this one in and really making this happen. I think a lot of you are working through the details. See if you know what this one happens to be. If you've ever worked on a laptop with an Ethernet connection and got slow performance, maybe this is what was causing it. We'll have to see if it happens to be what was causing it. See if you know the answer. Now, we've got a number of people that have locked in their answer at this point. So let's break down each one of these. The question again asks, a laptop's Ethernet connection is performing slower than expected. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Is it duplex mismatch, jumbo frames, spanning tree, speed mismatch, or WPA3 enabled? And we're all over the place on this one. We've got 37.4% say it's a speed mismatch, 35% say it's a duplex mismatch, 18% say it's jumbo frames, and then 5% say WPA3 is enabled, and 2% say it's spanning tree. This is not where I thought the answers were going to go. I was not expecting this. So this is remarkable. Of course, I always think it's going one way. It always goes a different direction anyway. So the two that are the top here are a speed mismatch and a duplex mismatch. Maybe it's one of those, although 17% for jumbo frames is still pretty good. Let's talk about speed mismatches and duplex mismatches and see if we can really break down what these happen to be. The speed is referring to what we would set our speed on our Ethernet or wireless device. In this case, we're dealing with a laptop's Ethernet connection. So the speeds would probably be options between 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000. So if you've got a laptop, it could run at any of those 4 different speeds. And there's even in many of these devices an option for auto, which ideally would automatically match whatever you're connecting to. It doesn't always happen, but that is an option. If you're looking through the duplex, there's really only 3 options. You're either full duplex, you're half duplex, or again, you're auto. Auto can be great. Auto can be awful. So you just have to know your auto whenever you're working with a particular switch in a particular device. Now, if you have a mismatch of those, either of the speed or the duplex, different things happen. If it is an incorrect speed, the switch, if you've set to auto, the switch in the device will auto-negotiate the speed and connect. But the problem is that it might auto-connect you at a lower speed, and it might be slow to do that. But even so, you're going to get 100 megabit versus 1,000 megabit. You may not even realize that it's running that slowly. So that's probably not going to be your issue. And indeed, if you don't have it set to auto-negotiate and you've set one side for 1,000 and one side for 100, you don't get the middle ground. You don't get something in the middle between those two. A speed mismatch means that you will not connect. It will not have a connection. There will be no Ethernet connectivity at all if there is a true speed mismatch. If you don't have auto-negotiate turned on and they're different, it's not going to work at all. So in this particular question, we were asking about slow performance. If it was a true speed mismatch, there's no performance. There's no data that will go through. Next on our list might be a duplex mismatch then. We've just talked about duplex mismatches earlier in the study group. A duplex mismatch would mean you have full duplex configured on one side, half duplex configured on the other, and now you're getting performance that is somewhere in the middle, where the full duplex side is sending data down as fast as it can. The half duplex side is sending data, but somehow the other side isn't playing properly, and you end up having late collisions. Happens all the time. And those late collisions are very indicative of a duplex mismatch. Doesn't mean that's the only reason for a late collision, but if you have a duplex mismatch, you will almost certainly see late collisions once you start putting some data over those connections. So in this case, speed mismatch was not the answer we were looking for. We were looking, or excuse me, speed mismatch would be no connectivity. Slower connectivity would be a duplex mismatch. And indeed, if you chose, and a lot of you are now suddenly kicking in that duplex mismatch, we're going to fix that. Let's see if we're going to play with the settings that I have available on this. If I stop the poll, there we go, and show the correct answer, you're not able to lock in any more answers. We can just simply show you what the right answer might be. And that is the answer we were looking for was a duplex mismatch. Now, why wouldn't jumbo frames be the one we were looking for? Jumbo frames would make things work better in most cases. Jumbo frames would allow us to send more data over the network in a single frame. It's a much more efficient way to send very large amounts of data. If we're sending and backing up a system, jumbo frames are fantastic. If we're putting data onto a network accessible storage device, jumbo frames, it's a great choice for that because we can send information. We can send 9,000 plus bytes in a frame rather than 1,500. So it's like having a lot of single frames all collapsed into one, which is much more efficient when we're sending it across the network. Jumbo frames, things would go faster, not slower. So that would not be our most likely reason for this issue. Now, to be fair, for those of you that are thinking jumbo frames, if you have any equipment along between you and the remote device you're connecting to that is not configured for jumbo frames, you will find that just doesn't work at all. It will not be slow. It just won't work properly because the data is going to be dropped because the frames are going through too big. So ideally, jumbo frames are working properly and getting high speeds. If this was the option, it would be no connectivity. But in our question, we're having slow connectivity, which is very different. We've got 5% that said WPA3 is enabled. WPA3, obviously one of the most recent wireless network encryption protocols. But for this question, we're on a laptop's Ethernet connection. It's a physical wired connection for the laptop. You don't see them much anymore on a laptop. Somebody has an old laptop. So plugging in their Ethernet connection, therefore, they're not using WPA3, would not be one of the options you would choose. So not something we would look at. And spanning tree is a protocol that allows us to prevent any type of loops on our switch network. That would not provide a slowdown to the network. In fact, it makes the network run, I wouldn't say faster, but more reliably, because we know there's not going to be a loop that suddenly hits us on the network. So spanning tree is not the right answer. The only answer here that would be the most likely reason for a slowdown would, in fact, this would be the first thing I would look at, would be duplex mismatch. That's what we were hoping to find. That is the right answer, and that's the one that you should have chosen when you locked in your answer. That's the one that is the correct answer for this particular question. Well, can you believe we have done an hour of Q&A already? So much information that we've gone through, and we've really only just hit the surface. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of topics you have to know for your Network Plus exam, but fortunately, every single one of these topics is documented for you in the CompTIA exam objectives. Make sure you download and use these objectives. They are very useful for your studies. They make a great last-minute checklist. You can find them for free on the CompTIA website. Simply go to your favorite search engine, type in CompTIA exam objectives. It'll be the first hit. Or you can go to professormesser.com/objectives, and I have a link there that will take you over to the CompTIA website. And they are comprehensive. They have everything inside of them. I think I have a set of the objectives right here that we could look through. Let's put me on the screen now that, or take me off the screen, depending on what it is. Here's the objectives. Let's go to 2 pages worth, just so you can see all of the bullets. There's 2 pages. There's another 2 pages, another 2 pages. Look at all the detail that's in here. For example, given a scenario, use the appropriate statistics and sensors to ensure network availability. Performance metrics and sensors include device and chassis, which would be temperature, central processing usage, memory, or some network metrics like bandwidth, latency, and jitter. So you're starting to see where all this information comes from, like CRC errors, giants, runts, encapsulation errors, and what they might be. And that's just a small part of the things you need to know for the exam. The objectives have everything you need to know. They are extensive in the things that you need to know. So make sure you use those. You download them. They are very, very powerful. They really tell you everything you need to know. So make sure you go into those set of exam objectives and you use them, because they will be able to tell you immediately whether it's something you need to know or whether it's something you don't need to know. If it's in the objectives, you need to know it. If it's not in the objectives, don't even bother. It's not going to be an important piece of information for your exam, which really helps focus. Now you know that these are exactly the topics I need to know. Also helps you know when you're studying materials from an older site somewhere, not one of mine, but if you are studying from other third-party materials, you notice they're asking questions that never came up in my course. Well, that's because they're not in the exam objectives, and perhaps what you're studying from is a little bit outdated as well. So hopefully that can help you on the exam objectives. Of course, we do one of these study groups every month. I have another one already scheduled for August the 16th. I need to update my calendars, which you will always find at professormesser.com/calendar. This is our Network Plus study group for August. We have A Plus study groups on the 8th and the 10th. We've got a Network Plus study group on August the 16th and a Security Plus study group on August the 23rd. Of course, we're not even through July yet. If you want to take the Security Plus study group for July, it's 2 days from now. We're doing this on Thursday. And if we want to do this on, if you come back, or we're doing this on Tuesday, if you want to come back on Thursday, it's our Security Plus study group. And that is in the calendar. If you would like to know when that happens to be in your time zone, you can find that at professormesser.com/calendar. Or if you're watching this video well after July or August, go to the calendar. We'll find out when the next live event is going to be at professormesser.com/calendar. Well, although the first hour of our Q&A is over, we now have the second hour to go through. Those are the questions. You can submit your questions from the Vevox app that you've already been using. There's a link, there's a button that opens up a new tab for you where you can put any type of question you would like into that particular set of Q&A. And I'll step through those one by one. We'll be able to see what those happen to be. Don't forget about my success bundle. It's at professormesser.com/netsuccess. A great way to support what we do on the site. A set of course notes. You can get all our videos to download, audio forms of those, and more. Of course, you don't want to pay full price for your voucher. If you're in the US or Canada, get a discounted voucher on my website. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers. And you can either go to the academic store if you happen to be in college, or I think high school as well. If you're not in college or high school, then you can use the other links on that page to get the most discounted vouchers you'll find this side of the Mississippi. I'm guessing. It's got to be somewhere close to that, right? So professormesser.com/vouchers. And of course, we're always here, even when we're not doing something live. You can find us on Discord at professormesser.com/Discord. Find all of our training classes. Every minute of every video is out on YouTube at professormesser.com/YouTube. And we do have a weekly Network Plus a pop quiz question. We'd love for you to try that one. Go to professormesser.com/Twitter or professormesser.com/Instagram. Well, thanks for joining us. Thanks for being here for the study group. We have so much more to step through. One of the things that we constantly work on is making questions that will be something you can enjoy in this first hour. Now we're going to do questions for the second hour. So thanks for joining us. Stick around for the after show, and we'll see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. Okay, take a sip. Well, it was a little bit of a challenge of me bouncing around and trying to figure out the new system, but I think it worked overall. I think it worked pretty well. I'm pretty happy with that. But now's the time where you can submit a question that we can go through. So instead of me asking you questions for an hour, let's have you ask me questions for an hour. These questions can be anything that you would like to talk about. It could be related to certifications. It could be related to IT. It could be related to the weather. I don't care. It could be anything you'd like to talk about. You can submit those questions. This is a little bit different than what we've done in the past. You can submit those questions in the Vevox app. So use the same app that you were just using to answer those questions. Well, that's not going to help you. If I bring it up, there we go. You can ask the questions in the Vevox app. So I will go through the questions. We'll have a look at them, see what those different options are, and see if we happen to know what those different things might be. So I will step through the questions on my side and kind of step through the different options that might be available. This allows me to kind of see everything at a glance and being able to work through. So there's a number of here that have worked out pretty well. So let's move some of these over and let's publish them. So let's start with one here that we have. You can see these will pop up on the screen. I'm going to put a few on the screen and you can work through those to see if it's something that we might want to work along with. So this gives me a chance to kind of see everything in one place, which is kind of nice. We'll start with this one. I think it's a pretty good question to go through. This question asks from What You Gonna Do? Who asks, I'm about to finish a bachelor's degree in cybersecurity and information assurance from WGU. Hey, that's great. Congratulations. Your videos and resources have been invaluable in getting my certifications. What do you think is a realistic expectation job-wise right out of college in the United States? I have a lot of certs, but no security or tech work experience. You know, this is one that a lot of people, especially those of you that go through a series of technical classes or courses, or in this particular case, a degree that is a technical degree, often find or go through the process of trying to figure out, now, how do I get my foot in the door? And this is a really good question along those lines. And one of the things that I've done, and we'll reference this in the rest of this, but if you go to the YouTube video description of this video, I have a link there for a video that I made on how to get a job in IT with no experience. And the reason I created that particular video is for questions like this. You're out of college, you have a degree, maybe you've got some certs, but how do you get things going, especially if you're interested in IT security? And why wouldn't you be? IT security is not only sort of the higher level of IT from a job responsibility and in some cases a pay perspective, but it's also a really exciting role in IT. It's one that I come from with the jobs that I had dealing with cybersecurity. And every day was something different. Every day was an interesting experience. There were new things to learn and new things to find on people's network all the time. The stories that I have are remarkable of what I've seen on people's networks. But how do you get to that level? Because a cybersecurity or IT security role is not often considered to be entry level. Very often we have to work up to a very involved IT security role. So you'd have to have a good knowledge of operating systems. You'd already have to have some knowledge of networking and the protocols that are used on the network. And then you can apply that knowledge into an IT security role. It's a very common path that people will take. But there's some ways that you could maybe shortcut that, because learning about operating systems and then learning about the network, you're talking about getting experiences that will take years before you will be qualified to apply as a cybersecurity analyst or engineer, for example. We don't tend to hire for those roles right out of college. You need to have some practical experience before you get there. But there are some entry level, we'll call them cybersecurity roles or cybersecurity starting roles in some environments, especially if you live in a larger geographical area where there's a lot of companies and a lot of activity from an IT perspective. And what you're looking for most likely is a SOC. No, not the sock you lost, not the other part of the pair. You're looking for an SOC, a Security Operations Center, a SOC. The Security Operations Center is designed to be a central clearinghouse for all the security goings on for a particular organization, or if it's for an MSP or security managed provider for multiple organizations. So there's usually bunches of screens up. There are tickets and logs being shown, and there's phone calls that are coming in. And a great entry-level job in a SOC would be that first-level engineer, someone who they're doing the grunt work. They are taking the phone calls. They are parsing the emails. They're figuring out how to triage and where to send these problems to. And for the simple things, maybe they're able to answer or resolve some of the simpler problems. But most of the time, the messages and issues and logs and errors and alerts and things that are popping up need to have someone inform where these particular problems are going to be assigned. And you're that person. Now, this means that you're probably not going to get a lot of hands-on. You're not going to be part of the incident response team right out of the gate, but you are going to be around the people who are part of the incident response team. They are part of the engineering team. They do have this knowledge of what's going on, and what a perfect opportunity to start learning from them. So this would be if you have the ability to either be part of the Security Operations Center, or you happen to be someone who is already in an organization that has security professionals. Ask them if there's something you can work with them on. See if they need some extra pair of hands on the weekend for a particular project. See if you could look over their shoulder while they're performing a certificate update, just so you can get some familiarity with the process. Most of the time, and that's one great thing about this industry, people do really great things when you simply ask them, hey, can you help me with this? They're more than happy to help. Most of the folks in this industry do a great job along those lines. So I would also say that this is a really good thing you should consider, is either working with people who are already in those roles or get into an organization at the lowest levels where you can work up into that role. Now, I would say overall, there's probably more non-security related entry-level roles in IT than security related. So don't limit yourself to only security. But if that's something you want to think about, you may want to lean that direction. But don't bypass any of those other entry-level positions in security, because entry-level is sometimes a very difficult thing to be able to get your arms around. It's really difficult sometimes to find that that role that you could get your foot in the door, and that's what you're trying to do. You will very quickly move into security, but first you need an IT job. Get in the door. Even if it's the lower level, the grunt work, the bad times of the day to work, the environment is hectic. There's a lot that you have to remember. You're having to learn a lot in a very short period of time. That's perfectly normal. And it's perfectly normal not to know what to do, but it's important that you know who to ask. And any entry-level position is good. If you can help get one in a SOC, if you want to move down the road of security, that might help you as well. So that's what I would do if you're, of course, working through those pieces. Let's see other questions that come in. This is a good question. I don't actually know the answer to this one. So let's publish it. It's from Jay, who asks, who says, I've binged all of your Network Plus study groups over the past few days while preparing for my exam next week. I can't stop staring at the motherboard behind you. Tell us all about it, all the specs, all the deets, lay them on me. I don't know. I don't remember which motherboard is back there. Let's grab it. Let me quickly get the motherboard. Hold on. We're going to disrupt everything. Not a green screen. Told you it wasn't a green screen. So, or maybe it is a green screen and I just performed a very complex set of video special effects. Maybe that's what happened. So here is our motherboard. This is quite a motherboard. Now, which one is this? I'm trying to remember which device it was that I pulled this from. And I don't, okay. I think I do know what this is. This is this a, it's the Intel motherboard type. I'm trying to even remember what Intel called it at the time. But let's have a look at it. Let me get it so that I can do this as well. So let's have a look at this motherboard. It's a very interesting motherboard. In fact, those of you that are sort of motherboard people, I don't want to put it too close. Let's put it so you can actually see, because my focus range here, not very good. If I do that, it doesn't work very well. So this is the motherboard. You'll see some interesting things about this already. Already you can see, well, first it's got normal type memory modules would go here. Where's the CPU? There's one problem. Can't seem to find a CPU on here. There isn't one. Well, there is, but it's not on the motherboard right now. And right across the top, look at this thing. Like having all of that there. So you've got also at the bottom rails on the motherboard. What? It's got rails, as if it was in a computer and you could slide the entire motherboard out of the computer with this connection at the top, like it's an adapter card, like it's an expansion card, but the entire motherboard is an expansion card. You can slide it out, have the motherboard there, and then slide a new one back in. The CPU that's on here, I think, was one of the old Pentium CPUs, and that's a slot-based CPU. It's a big package that fits into that connection that's there. So these are the old Intel. I think this one came out of an older sniffer, an older Network General sniffer. And that's why I have it up there. It's just so ancient. You never see this technology anymore. I've still got the old battery still stuck on there. I wonder if we should put a meter on that. Is it still good? But it's not. There's no way that's still good. What is the name of this? I've already forgotten the name of these motherboards. I'm going to go back to my 600 series. That's what we're going to do right now. We're going to go back to our 600 series Intel motherboard type. NLX? Does that sound like a motherboard type? That's what off the top of my head, that's what I think it is. So let's look very quickly for NLX motherboard, and I got it right. How about that? Do they have a picture? They don't. Somebody has a picture on the internet, though, and we're about to use it. It does. The Wikipedia says it does have a picture, but if I look at the picture, it's not there. I wonder if I can click on it, and then let's look together. There we go. So, found it. So there's our NLX motherboard. Almost identical. Notice that is, I think, probably a 286 or 386 on this particular NLX motherboard, but effectively the same thing. This is an upgraded version with the Pentium. You can see all of the connections along the side. Can I put it like the same way? Have I got it backwards? Yes, I do. So here it is. Same way. There we go. So that's how it is in the picture, and that's how it is on the screen. So it's the NLX motherboard. Don't see those much anymore. It was a nice idea because you've got these rails on the bottom. It was remarkably easy to swap out. So simple. But it just didn't last. We had so many different motherboard types that it made much more sense just to standardize on one single motherboard type in ATX one. So that's where that came from. So there you go. That was actually a pretty good question that I didn't know the answer to. I had to really think about what is that? Where did this come from? I bet it's on sale. They're ancient. They are very, very, very old. You do not want to use NLX any longer. But there you go. That is the answer to the question about what in the world's behind you. Now I've got other things behind me. It's kind of hard to see because they're blurry. There's a sort of an electronic Rubik's Cube. There's a keyboard for an Apple. There's ham radio equipment. There's a picture of an Atari 2600 joystick that one of my sons made that sits there. Up here, you can't see it. There's a CW paddle and a couple Blackberries and a compact iPack is up there. We'll have to do that one time. And then there's other stuff up there as well. An old Apple. There's other things that are going on up there. But that's the motherboard. So that was a pretty interesting question. I think that's one that we could step through. And indeed, I need to put this up so I'll step on it. Let's put this over here. There we go. So I think that's one that might help you too. Now you know what motherboard is there to have those. Let's do some more questions. Who did the motherboard question? Let me flip over there. It was JB. Hey JB, thanks for that motherboard question. That was a pretty good one. It's kind of fun to keep going up there and having a look at those. It does look like a green screen. It's not a green screen. Let's have a look at some other things. Okay, let's talk about this one. I think this is a pretty good one because you might run into this in your exam. There's a couple of others. I'm going to go ahead and publish a couple of others. And you notice you can vote on these questions. I don't know that we really need to do that online, but it's another one of those options that we could do. And we'll talk about all of these. So we've got 3 questions kind of queued up there that we can kind of break through and have a look. Let's go with Jane. Jane asks, do the CEUs count every month in my study groups? I'm assuming you mean the Professor Messer study group CEUs that I'm doing. Like for the next 3 years, can you get 36 CEUs? Would that be possible? Could we do that? Wouldn't that be great if all you had to do was watch the study groups or the reviews of the study groups to know exactly what would be there? But the reality is that's simply not the case. When we talk about continuing education unit credits, there's a number of things you have to look at. If you look at the CompTIA website, there are renewal paths where you can take one particular thing, like you could complete the Cert Master CE and you're renewed. You could take a higher level CompTIA Cert, you're renewed. So there's these one single activities that you could do. When you're collecting CEUs, you're renewing with multiple activities. So you could complete training in higher education. You could participate in IT industry activities. You can publish a relevant article, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I think right now you are participating in an IT industry activity. I think that's what that probably is. But here's the thing. Here are the different things you can work through. So for maybe this is not the category I want. Maybe it was a different one. Let's look at the other one that says complete training in higher education. Okay, and this one is a list and it says attend a live webinar. You know, one of the things I mentioned is that I will send you a 1-hour webinar category CEU. This is what I mean by that, is that this is the category of CEU that I'm providing for you. And if you have your Network Plus certification, you can earn 6 CEUs by attending or watching a replay of one of our live events. But to earn your Network Plus certification and renew it, you have to get 30 CEUs. So unfortunately, you can only get 6 of those 30 in any 3-year renewal period, by attending or watching a replay of one of my study groups and requesting a CEU. Only 6. If you have your A+, it's only 4. For Security Plus, it's at least 10, but you have to earn 50 CEUs for Security Plus. You only get 10. So you, unfortunately, as much as I would love for it to be the case, you cannot go through the process of doing all of your study groups and getting all the CEUs you need. That's not going to work. So unfortunately, that's just not going to happen. You have to go through the process of not only watching the study group, but doing other things as well. That's why I think a lot of people, when they are looking at doing this, at going through and earning and renewing their certification, they tend to go to the CertMaster CE or take a higher level certification because it's a one-time thing. You do it and you're done. You're not collecting CEUs. There's not a time constraint. You just, whenever you do it is when it happens. So I think that's another place that might be good to go. But it would be nice, Jane, to have the CEUs count every month. Unfortunately, can't collect 36 CEUs that way. Darn it. Maybe next time. So at least that answers your question, though. Let's take this one from Keith. This message, question from Keith says, hey, I passed my Network Plus last week in great measure due to all of your helpful materials. First, congratulations, Keith, on your new Network Plus certification. Keith says, during my exam, I was caught off guard by a question, which I won't state, good for you, following the terms of your CompTIA candidate agreement. But he says the question was never included anywhere in any of the materials, probably the course notes, probably the videos, or probably most importantly, the exam objectives. I found the topic in the Security Plus materials. Was this likely a trial question that didn't count against me? Well, we don't know, first. If there's anything we know about CompTIA's grading, is that we don't know anything about CompTIA's grading. Not sure how that works. And the problem, though, is that we don't know how they grade, but they do tell us in the candidate agreement, and I think they also tell us in the exam objectives, they could ask things on the exam that go outside the scope of the objectives. They rarely do this. It's very unusual for this to happen. And when you find it happening, I would say probably more often than not, they are doing that as a trial question to see if maybe you know the answer to it, even though you're not studying for, in this example, Security Plus. Do you know this topic? Because they might be working on changing some of the objectives and they want to know what you know and what you don't know. And here, if you've not been studying, this is completely unprompted, but it's also a little unnerving on your exam when you get questions like this. It likely was a trial question, and it's very likely it's an ungraded question. There are no points associated with that question. So I think in this case, that's probably exactly what you ran into. I suspect it was. The real important part of this, and if there's a takeaway that any of you could do with this one, is this was one question on Keith's exam that was outside the scope of the objectives. And I don't want to speak for Keith, but I would bet the rest of the exam all directly from the exam objectives. That's what I'm talking about. Grab those exam objectives. They tell you everything you need to know. Stick to the objectives. You're not going to have a problem passing this exam the way it works every time. Thank you, Keith, for that question. That was a really good one. Along those same lines, and it sort of fits, that's why I chose this one from Dylan. It says, what would you say is the most important section of the test I should focus on for studying? What would be the best baseline thing I should know for the Network Plus? So this sort of fits that answer of it's the exam objectives. There is no single most important section of the exam. Obviously, the different parts of the exam are all structured a little bit differently. And let me bring up, speaking of which, let me bring up this. While I'm doing that, Keith in the chat even said, yep, that was the only question that was outside the scope of the exam. Okay, that's what we expected to hear. Let's go to the objectives. And you'll notice there are 5 different domains for the Network Plus exam. There's networking fundamentals, network implementations, network operations, network security, and network troubleshooting. And they are respectively 24, 19, 16, 19, and 22% of the exam each, which is pretty close to each other in percentages. So all of those different domains pull relatively evenly from each other. There's not one that's well more than another, for example. So they tend to go pretty evenly across these 4 or 5 different domains, or 5 different domains in this version of the Network Plus. So it's very likely that the topics you need to know for the exam are topics that are evenly distributed through this exam. So there's not just any one topic I could point to and say, well, that one's definitely going to be on the exam, because there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different topics in that set of exam objectives, as you just saw, but there are only 90 questions maximum on the exam. So some things are not going to show up on your exam. Other things are absolutely going to show up on your exam. So we have no way to point to any 1 or 2 particular things. So what I tell people is that don't focus on any 1 or 2 particular things. Learn everything that's in the exam objectives. Use it as your checklist. It's free. It has all the acronyms in the back. Have you seen this? Let's go to the back of this. There's your acronym list. 2 pages worth for Network Plus. So much better than Security Plus, by the way. You're in good shape. So that is where you would find the acronyms. So if it's in this list, you need to know it. If it's not in this list, I would argue don't worry about it, because they stay so close to this list that you're only going to need to know what's on that. And if you know everything on this list, you're going to pass your exam. No problem at all. So that's absolutely a good question. Thank you for that, Dylan. Let me keep going through the questions that are in my list here and see if I can find some other things that people might want to know. Let's go to here, and this is sort of the same question. So I'll put those both in here. These are really more about the website and what we do. This is from Madi, who says, hello, Professor. How long does it take for me to receive your exam books after I purchase? I'm assuming you're referring to the physical course notes, or in the case of my other courses, I have other books also available for those. These books are printed on demand for you. So when I print them, they are yours from the very beginning, and they are shipped directly to you from the printer. These books usually take 5 to 7 days to go through the process of printing, boxing it up, putting a label on, and getting it ready to ship out. Sometimes a little faster, but most of the time a pretty good number, 5 to 7 business days just to get it out the door. And at that point, it usually takes in the domestic U.S. Domestic shipping, usually somewhere around 3 to 4 days. So in a couple of weeks, you'll have it in your hands easily. If it's outside the country, depending on where you are, it might take a little bit longer, although we have printers in the Australia, we have printers in the EU, and we have printers, I guess going to Canada, it would be printed in the United States and sent over to Canada. So sometimes there is a little bit more of a delay because there is international shipping involved, has to go through customs. But once it goes through the customs process, usually that's pretty quick for these types of things. It's delivered internally within whatever your local mail system is for your country. Along those same lines, Madi, I hope that answers that question. A follow-up Madi had is, well, what if it's in South Africa? Well, I don't print in South Africa. I ship directly to South Africa, though. So it probably is going to extend that by another week or so just to ship it down into South Africa and have it delivered. But I ship to South Africa all the time. I ship to Australia all the time. I ship to other parts of the world all the time. Not a problem. Just you put your address in, I will send it to you wherever you happen to be, and you'll see the differences in shipping costs during checkout. You can decide if this is something you would like to do or not. And of course, there's always the digital version if you would prefer something that doesn't have to be shipped somewhere around the world. So maybe that can help you. Other questions. Let's keep going with some of these. Some of these I'm going to take a sip real quick. Let's talk about this one. This is a good CompTIA question. We'll put it in there. Other questions that are there. I'll put this one in here. I'm just clicking around. You guys I know this is just really compelling when I'm looking through questions and clicking on things. So let's talk about these two that I put there. The next on my list down here, I like how these put them in an order that's very different. As you vote, it moves them up. So now, not only do I have to go through this process, I now have to hunt for the questions. I'm going to have to work on that. There's always these little things you have to work through on a new system, right? That's one of them. This is EV who says, Professor Messer, will I be able to create the 7-second subnetting chart before I start the exam and use it? I've been going through the practice exams and the subnetting questions. I would definitely need the chart to get through those quickly. And the 7-second subnetting process does, or it's set up specifically so you can write it out very quickly and then use it for the entirety of your exam. It was originally written and created if you were going to have a physical sheet in front of you that you can write on, or a sheet of paper in front of you that you can write on. These days, it's a marker, erasable marker in a laminated sheet in many cases. The question, though, specifically is, when can you write the chart out? And if you're taking this online, you would have to type it out because the online is done in a notepad type area that's on the screen. The official answer to this is you cannot begin making notes on your materials, whether you were doing this online or whether you were in a physical center. You cannot write on those until the exam clock starts. Not the clock for reading through and approving the candidate agreement, the clock for the exam. That is the official rules from Pearson VUE and ostensibly CompTIA. But the situation is, though, if you are not online, if you're at a testing center, the people at the testing center will usually bring you into the room. They'll start it up. They'll get the candidate agreement in front of you, and it's counting down. And then they leave. They're like, okay, good luck with your exam. Start go when you approve this, and your exam will start. And they leave the room. Now, obviously, they've got a camera, and they're watching what's going on. But many people at that point, while they are reading through their candidate agreement, will start making notes on their note sheet. Technically not allowed. Technically a violation of the rules. Technically, you could have your entire exam shut down at that point. And in some testing centers, they will even tell you, you cannot write on here until your exam starts. So they're very strict about that. But that does happen. Some people do write on that before the exam starts, which just isn't fair to everybody. Technically, you wait for the exam to begin. The 90-minute clock has started. Now you can write on that piece of paper. So can you write it down in a minute, in 60 seconds? You need to now start practicing today and see how quickly you can type it out, how quickly you can write it out. Now, of course, there's also the magic number method as well. Some people like that method because it might not require as much writing. There's not as many tables. That's another option. The 7-second subnetting is what I use whenever I do exams. That's what got me through my Cisco exams. So it's something I put into my course so that you could see what I use, because I wanted a method where there was no math. And if you look at some of the other methods out there, like the magic number method, it requires you to do some math calculations. When in the middle of an exam, I am not a good person for doing math calculations. I'm not the person you should go to for any type of calculation, period. The 7-second subnetting method has the worst calculation you do on it is you add 1 or subtract 1. That's it, which means it's practically foolproof for someone like me. Now, not everybody needs that. Some people are very good at doing the math in the exam. Maybe the magic number method is a good one, or maybe a different method. There's lots of other derivatives that you could choose from. I'm not saying you should use my method or anybody else's. I'm just saying that that's the one I use. And if that doesn't work for you, don't use it. Find a method that works for you. There's all sorts of customizations and other methods, and the magic number method and the number where you use your fingers, and there's plenty to choose from. Don't worry. You will find plenty there to look at. And that's what I would recommend as well, is that you go through and try to find the method that works best for you. Maybe you're doing it online, so maybe 7-second isn't the best. Maybe you choose magic number. Maybe you use a different type. Find out what works for you. That's my recommendation. So that's my recommendation, especially when you know you can't write until the exam starts, and maybe you don't want to take that much time away from the 90 minutes allocated to your exam. It's all time management, right? So that's my recommendation for you. Another question from Scott asks, on CompTIA's website in my profile, I see a tab listed as stackable certificates, but A+ was listed in a different tab. What are stackable certificates and how do they work? There was I think it was 4 or 5 years ago at this point, it might even be a little bit longer, this CompTIA introduced these stackable certifications. And the stackable certifications are simply a combination of certifications where putting those together means that you can have a larger, broader description or a stack of what those descriptions those certifications happen to be. For example, and you're right, A+ from a cybersecurity perspective isn't there. Let's see what's stackable for infrastructure. We'll look at these since we're doing Network Plus. For example, if you have completed the CompTIA A+ exam and the CompTIA Network Plus exam, you may not even realize this, you are a CompTIA IT operations specialist. When you stack those two together, they have this broader name. Now, this is interesting because it's another name that we could put on a resume, but is it? How many employers are looking for and have specifically put into their job postings, we're looking for a CompTIA IT operations specialist? I would argue there's probably a total of 0 job postings with that particular name on it, with those words. In fact, I don't use those words. I don't use these stackable certifications because saying I'm a CompTIA IT operations specialist doesn't say what certs you have earned. Most employers are looking to see if there's a particular certification that you have worked with. So that is exactly what you should be doing, is working along those lines. And I would argue it's interesting, and maybe you do put it on your resume, but don't leave off A+ and Network Plus. Always list out all of the certifications that you have earned. If you want to put the stackable on there, you can, but I would say probably 99.9999 times out of 100, no one will understand what that is anyway. They'll think, oh, did you take a third test? Did you take a CompTIA IT operations specialist test? I've never heard of that. No, I didn't take a test. I'm just stacking the A+ and Network Plus and calling it something else. Oh, okay. Well, that's great. I'm not sure that helps, and it probably doesn't. But that's what the stackable certifications are. That's the way it works. So hopefully that's one you can look at. It's interesting, but I don't know that it technically caught on. But they keep doing it. They keep going through that process and going through the different pieces of that. Other questions. Let's keep going through the other questions that are here. I'm just sort of skipping along with some of these. So this came up recently, and I think it would be worth talking about. Let's look at this question that came through from Jishy Josh. Hello, Jishy Josh. This question asks, I work in the field on POS. No, it's not that. It's point of sale. And kiosks, and do implementations such as router refreshes / firewall installations. Really enjoy it. One company that's unlike the others bills itself as an IT AV company. That would be audio visual. As its clients are companies with Zoom rooms, issues with presentation equipment, usually for large audiences like 100, 200 people. Can you please speak to the differences / similarities between what I do and what is meant by IT AV work? Let's talk about that, because there was another question about AV that came up recently in our Discord, and I was sort of in passing. Probably I was on my mobile device, and I made the comment that AV is not IT. Audio visual, it's not an IT position. It simply is not. Is it a position that requires you to have some technical knowledge on video and audio and to some degree networking? Yeah, it does. Is it an IT position? It is not. It only at a very, very high level gets into anything technical relating to information technology and how we would use it. Now, to be fair, and I could probably speak to this, audio visual, there's a big need for knowledge in audio visual for organizations, for presentations, for conferences, or for live streaming. And it's important that you have a knowledge of that if that's something you're going to be working with. But the folks that are doing audio visual are very commonly dealing with the physical plant, because they're putting together cabling and wires that will be sending the audio and video signals across the network. They, at least at some very low level, very basic level, have an understanding of what a switch does. It sort of ends there. I've worked with a lot of AV folks who are brilliant when it comes to understanding the type of cameras they need, the type of lenses they're going to use, the different microphones that are appropriate for different situations, how you would place those in the room to prevent any type of feedback, how you would get large 1080p and 4K video signals to multiple screens at the front of the room, how you would integrate that with Zoom. There's lots of great things to do there, but all of that is a very specialized niche that is very focused on audio and visual, and has very little overlap into the world of information technology. Maybe the only basics are there's a network in both of them. I guess that's it. But on IT, you need to understand VLANs, you need to understand routing, you need to understand VPNs and encryption and integrity and all the other things we've always talked about in the Network Plus. So that's why I tell people all the time, if you're interested in a job in IT, I would not consider an AV position to be a good segue into IT. It really is its own world. And if I was looking at entry-level resumes and somebody said, well, I have a job right now and it's an AV, so I already know a lot of this stuff. Well, a little bit of the high-level concepts, but you really don't have an understanding of what IT is going to require of you. You really have to take your A+ and really understand why that is the case. Or Network Plus, another good one to take to really understand why that's the piece. It's still technical. AV, absolutely technical. Those folks are brilliant. They know how to get the audio and the video where it needs to be, how to manage it, how to store it, how to record it. They know it. They've got it. It's just the IT world is much broader, much more technical, and requires much more of a knowledge of practically all of those different technologies. The only difference might be high amount of video being sent, and you start to see where this blends together. You mentioned Josh that you were talking about a company that has a Zoom room. So in that Zoom room, they probably have a camera. The camera sees the desk. Maybe it's a camera that recognizes who's talking and it moves depending on who's talking at the moment. There's all these nice little things, but none of that fits into the world of IT. So I tell people all the time, should I go get a job with an AV company and then move up into IT? I said, no. Your entry-level job should be in IT. Don't do AV. Go to the IT folks. An IT position at a help desk is a much better entry-level position than an AV position with an AV company, if you're interested in getting into IT. If you're interested in doing AV, go do that. There are companies out there that are very successful doing AV. I'm working with one right now to talk about different configuration settings and video distributions and other things. They know their stuff. And I can ask them, how could I do this? And they go, well, you can do this and this, and we got equipment for that. And I'm having to do a lot more research because I don't deal with that equipment. I don't deal with audio-visual, home type, office type, video matrix switching. We just don't do it. And there's a lot of interesting standards and communication differences. It doesn't use Ethernet, but it's a type of frame. It's a whole interesting world that they're working in. But it's different than IT. So that's my recommendation to you, is just to stick with the traditional IT if that's something you're interested in. If you want to go into IT, go into IT. Don't worry about the AV side. Other questions. Here's one that probably is a little too personal, but that's okay. It's not that personal. We'll go to this one. But since you asked, I said I would answer questions, right? So we're going to answer a question. This one's weird because it's It's about what I wear, not other times, what I'm wearing right now. So, well, I don't know. Now where'd the question go? Did I click the wrong button? Very, very possible. Let's get rid of the things that I have here. Did I send it to the wrong message? Did I archive it already? Probably not. No, I published it. The question asks, if I can find it, are there just so many questions? There are. There's a lot. Oh, I can sort by recent. Okay. Maybe that will change how this works for me. It doesn't, actually. It doesn't change my recent. It changes the other recent. The question, this is another one from Madi that says, hey, Prof, been watching all your videos. Notice you only wear golfers. I guess Madi's, this would be the sports shirts, as we say here in the United States. The sports, I guess a golf shirt would be an appropriate use. So that's the more casual shirt with the collar, short sleeves, and that's it. That is the shirt. That's what I'm wearing. Is that shirt. There you go. Some perspective of that. That's my modeling for the day. The reason is just because they're comfortable, and I am in a room with relatively warm lights. I have the air conditioning on, but they are LED, but there's still heat that is created by all of this equipment. And I just like being comfortable when I'm in front of the camera, but I also like like being able to look good. I mean, this is a visual medium, so you don't want to show up with a t-shirt that's ripped. It's got a stain from breakfast that fell on it, and everything's wrinkled. And no, you want something to look nice. So that's why I tend to wear these shirts. I'm not sure if that's really a legitimate question or not, but I liked answering it, so I went with it. I went along with that. I think that was fine. It was a fine question to ask. And I always, people all the time say, I watched your Security Plus course. It's 150 videos, and you wear the same shirt in the entire set of videos. And I always say, well, that's not the same shirt. I have a different shirt for every single video. They just all happen to be the same. That's not true. It is the same shirt. I do wash them. It's not the same shirt they're all clean. I'm going to wear a clean shirt. I see you people. And working through that. That's where that comes from. This was good. So let's talk about this. I'm assuming this is. We'll get more details from Cyrus, but I think this is a good one to go through. We'll publish that one and deal with this from Cyrus that asks, hello, Professor. Recently passed the exam with about 8 points over. Ooh, huge sweating. Oh yeah, that's close, but I would argue you studied exactly the right amount. That's my argument. Because why would you want to get a perfect score? You studied way too much for that. Back to Cyrus's question. My question is, once the exam was complete, I got an email that upon completion, my A+ was renewed. Is it possible for my Security Plus I passed as well? Well, I guess the question I have is, you said you recently passed the exam with 8 points over. I'm assuming, Cyrus, you mean the Network Plus exam. And you can confirm in the chat room that, yes, I meant the Network Plus exam. And we can talk about why that was important or how that is important to what we are doing here. Cyrus is in the chat room, says, yep, that's me. Now, yes, he meant Network Plus. Cyrus says, yes, the Network Plus was the one we were looking at. And this goes back to the renewal process for CompTIA. And it's something that I don't think a lot of people realize, but it's really great when you do it this way. We'll go back to this page that talked about renewing with a single activity. And you could just take your CertMaster CE and be done. But notice that if you earn a higher level CompTIA certification, you can also renew your certification. So at the bottom is A+, at the top is CASP Plus. But let's talk, you passed your Network Plus. I'm going to click on Network Plus, and you'll notice that if you pass your Network Plus, it will fully automatically renew your A+. You don't even have to go back and do A+. You don't have to renew A+. Whichever the highest level cert is, when you pass that, all of the lower level certs that you currently own are also renewed. So for example, if you took Security Plus, and you had also a Network Plus and A Plus, those would also be renewed. So just by passing your Security Plus, you've now just renewed your Network Plus and your A Plus. And you could work it out that way. You could take the A Plus, wait 3 years, and then pass your Network Plus just before it expires. And now both your Network Plus and A Plus are extended 3 years. Now you wait another 3 years and you take the Security Plus. Now the Security Plus, the Network Plus, and the A Plus are all renewed for 3 years. So whichever one is the highest sets the bar for everything else below it. And so that's why they have this diagram here. So you can click on any one of these and know what exam is able to cover or renew any other exam that's on the list, which is another great way to renew, by the way. If you're already planning to take one of these higher level certs, just take that. It renews everything you already have if it works out that way. So you've got some options. That's at least something that you can use to help figure out what to do next, where you should go next with those. I think that would be good. Other questions. Let's keep going through this list. I'm going to go back and maybe start moving some things around so that I can break out more details from this. Let's see if I can. Here, pretty good one. So let's go through. This is one that I constantly have to deal with anyway. So let's talk about this one. Where did I send that one? More clicking on my side. Did I publish it? Yes, I did. Let's keep going through the others. Did I archive it? Yes, I did. We'll figure out the details. More questions. And by the way, these questions are being pulled out of a list that is created in Vevox. Let me put up the screen for that while I'm sorting through all of these. I think I've got. So there is a section in your Vevox app that has a little tab with chat boxes on it. That's where you can submit these questions. And they as it mentions, I'm moderating them, so they may not appear immediately on this screen. But it's a good place to go to submit any of those questions that are there. So that's what you should do. If you're wanting to submit one, I would recommend that you do that. Some of these questions that are being asked are well outside the scope of the exam, like signaling coding. We won't be addressing that, but it's something you might be useful to know once you get into the higher levels of networking. For the purposes of the Network Plus exam, stick to the exam objectives. If what you're asking about isn't in the objectives, you don't need to know it. It really is that fundamental when you're working through it. This next question, let's keep going with this. Let's see where I can go with this one. Let's go to publish this question. And I'm wondering if I ran out of room on this screen with all the ones that are here. I think they're just putting them down into a different set on my screen. Or maybe I should refresh. And we'll get through everybody's answers. I could just read these answers off on my side too, which would be another good way to do it. This question, I'm going to do that because I think what I have now is just multiple pages of questions on the screen. And it is showing all 14 though. Maybe I'm just missing it. Maybe I'm having a problem reading today, which is entirely possible too. Let's go through the questions here. Here's the one that I just published. It's really about finding them at this point. The question asks, how important are command line tools / commands for performance-based questions? Linux commands are confusing. Is there any way to memorize? One of the things that I will agree with you, Linux commands are confusing. I think that's an international truth. And even the Linux people who are, they're pretty smug. If you've ever talked to them, they're pretty proud of themselves. Just ask them. Most Linux people are more than happy to tell you that it is a struggle. It's a war to get all of this information into your brain. Linux is not a simple operating system to be able to manage, but it's a very good operating system for many different purposes. It's very powerful. It has amazing flexibility and relatively good support in the community. So we get back to the Network Plus exam and other exams, and what you'll find is that there's a lot of commands you need to know. I need to know all the CD and mkdir and all of these other Linux commands that are similar to Windows, but then we start going outside the scope of it, understanding the top command or understanding the grep command or understanding the netstat command. These are involved commands with, in some cases, hundreds of options available to them, and you'd have to know exactly what command to use. I can use netstat, but do I use -n or do I use -r or do I use -s? And you have to remember that if you're planning to practically use that particular command in your job. Now, fortunately, on the CompTIA exam, the exam objectives are very broad when it comes to these objectives. So let's bring up the exam objectives again, since we're talking about them. I don't think I have, yeah, we have a few of them listed here for the tools that we would go through. So here are software tools and commands. The commands like ping, well, pings, that works in anything, Windows or Mac or Linux. But then you get into others like ifconfig, dig, netstat, which actually is on Windows 2, the route command, TCP dump, nmap. Some of these are Linuxy, but not completely, totally exclusive to Linux. Some of them are found in many different operating systems. You can run nmap on anything. You can run the arp command in Windows, for example, but also run the arp command in Linux. But what you'll notice here is those hundreds of different flags and options that you would use on these commands is not listed here. You don't see any of them. And as I've told you, stick to the exam objectives. If you're sticking to the exam objectives, you know that if they aren't asking you about specific flags, then those specific flags are probably not going to show up on the exam. It will be much more valuable to you if you understood in what scenarios would I use a particular command. So let's take an example. A network administrator has downloaded a 1 gigabyte log file from a firewall. And that administrator wants to find every instance in the log of the IP address 192.68.1.1. What Linux command would be the easiest or the best choice for finding that needle in that proverbial haystack of data? And then you would have to know, oh, is that netstat? Is it traceroute? Is it ping? Is it ifconfig? No, it's grep. Okay, I'd use grep. I'm not sure if even grep was in the Network Plus objectives there. But let's say you're taking A plus or Security Plus, where it certainly is. Okay, I don't have to know the grep and all of the different commands for showing it on one line or showing it on multiple lines or showing it a page at a time. I don't have to know that. I just have to know which one of those would be the best choice in that particular scenario. So I think don't worry so much about the details of these exams, of these commands. It will help you on the exam if you know more details about it. But I think most of the questions you're going to get are going to be very high level, and they might show, in fact, another good one is they show the output of a command and they say, what command did that? Okay, it's sort of the reverse of what we're used to. Usually they go, you use this command to perform a function. Instead, they're showing you the output and saying, what made this? So it does help if you have some practical using it. And that's why in the video, I demonstrate all of these commands. I go through each one of them, I type them in, and then I show you on the screen, here are the results of this command and what they're telling us. That way you're able to at least see it and be able to use those on your exam. Now, I think you should also use these exams or these commands for your exam, because there's something about typing a command in on a keyboard. There's something about the process of doing that and seeing the results of that command that somehow are firing different synapses in my brain for some reason. And I think that once you type in the dig command, if you just type in dig www.professormesser.com, enter, and you see the results of that, even though it's a very simple command, you probably already knew what it was going to do before you pushed the button, but you're looking through the results of this, there's something that happens in your brain that connects these things together. And I think the more online, hands-on type use you can get for these commands, the better you're going to be. So grab a Linux distribution. You can run it as a VM. Some Linux distributions have a CD type ISO that is a fully contained version of the operating system. You don't even have to install it. You just run it from the ISO, and it's a live CD, they call it. It's a live ISO. Those are great because you don't even have to install anything. You install a VM manager like VirtualBox, which is free. You tell VirtualBox, run this ISO I downloaded. That's a live ISO of this Linux distribution. It starts it up in a window on your Windows desktop. It runs Linux, and now you can pop out to a command prompt in Ubuntu, in Mint, in pick whatever distribution you'd like. Pop it out to the command line and start running these commands. Works great. I think it's a great way to get hands-on, and it's a great way to become a little more familiar with some of the commands, not only in Linux, but also the commands that you would run in Windows. They all sort of overlap each other when it works along those lines. So that's what I would recommend too. I think those are pretty good. Now, I know I'm at the top of the hour. Usually this is where we stop things. This new Q&A system, though, is working amazingly well. So let me kind of clear the screen, if you will, and we'll kind of work through some other questions that we have. This is what I really should have been doing the whole time. So I'm figuring it out as we go, okay? Thank you. I'm getting it. I am slowly becoming one with these. The chat room saying we shouldn't talk about this, but I'm going to talk about it. I think it's a good thing to talk about. And as someone who has taken both of these, I think I can give you at least some perspective of what this is. Since I mentioned taking Cisco exams, Pete writes, which would be the best to start with, Network Plus or CCNA? Been studying the CCNA for a while. I think I might switch to the Network Plus for my job. And I think this is probably one of the most common questions I get about the Network Plus exam that has nothing to do with the Network Plus exam. It sort of does. But it's more about direction. It's more about a broader strategy you should set for yourself and what you're planning to do in this industry. I will first say, when people talk about Cisco exams, the CCNA is probably the one they talk about the most. That is the Cisco Certified Network Administrator. It's not the lowest in Cisco exam or Cisco certification that is offered, but it is probably, I would say, by far the most popular that people are looking at. It is an exam that focuses on a good bit of network knowledge, network fundamentals, but it primarily focuses on how you configure at the command line Cisco switches, Cisco routers, Cisco voice over IP technologies, and other things, how to recover from them, how to back them up, how to work at the command line across multiples, how to transfer files to them. It's about managing Cisco equipment. And there is a good chunk of information there on network fundamentals that should not be dismissed at all. It's exceptional. It's a very good certification. That's why it's so popular. In fact, if you ask this question online, people who are very into Cisco will tell you, well, of course you do Cisco. It's the best in the world. Why would you do anything else? Get rid of that Network Plus. That's stupid. You need to do Cisco. It's what's going to pay you more. They just go on and on. I'm not sure what context that comes from, and I don't know why I talk that way, but that's how I read it whenever I see it online. So what I tell people, though, and this is really probably the most accurate as someone who's taken both Network Plus and the CCNA exams, is that CCNA is not an entry-level cert in any way, shape, or form. And I think that's something that most people will agree, whether you are very Cisco leaning or not. The CCNA is not an entry-level exam. Now, could you take the CCNA as your first networking certification? You could, but you're going to need to go back and study a lot more on the fundamentals, because they go through some of the fundamentals in the Cisco exam, but they really jump right into doing things at the command line on a switch or a router. And that's where these fall apart. If you see the books for Cisco, they're enormous. They're two really monster-sized books. There's a lot of content there. I tend to think of these as very complementary. both Network Plus and CCNA. I don't think there's not a ton of overlap between these. I think the Network Plus is designed to be that entry-level certification that gives you the fundamentals you need to understand the terminology, the nomenclature that we use when we're dealing with networks, understanding that switches are using spanning tree and routers have routing tables, and how the protocols work across the network and what cables you should use and how the fibers are different. A lot of this information is not contained in the CCNA. They don't have time to cover it. So you're not going to learn a lot about fundamental cables in the Cisco CCNA, but you will in the Network Plus. And so I tell people all the time, consider doing the Network Plus first and then jump right into CCNA, because then you can jump right into the configuration part of the CCNA and not worry so much about the fundamentals because you already went through those. But some people don't want to take the Network Plus, or the job that they're most interested in is they know they want to be a switch administrator. They want to be a router administrator. They want to design wide area networks. They want to configure and set up a redundant SD-WAN for their cloud-based applications. They know they're going to be going into Cisco world to do that. So maybe they start with CCNA. And that's not a bad strategy. Go start with CCNA and just recognize that you're going to have to study a little bit more because you didn't get the fundamentals prior to jumping into the CCNA. Now, the argument, of course, is that why should you start with Network Plus? CCNA is going to pay you better. But here's your problem, and this is mentioned in another question that I didn't publish, but I think it fits this, is that if you are interviewing for an entry-level position and you walk into this help desk position, or maybe it's even at a network operations center or a NOC, and they say, we're looking for entry level, and go, oh, great, I've got a CCNA. Immediately as a hiring manager, I'm going to try to figure out if this is going to be a good fit or not. Because I think we tend to think that the more certifications you have, the better you are when you walk into these interviews. But the reality is that if someone walked in for an entry-level position and they already had their CCNA, and after talking to them, they can tell me about configuring routers and switches, and they've set up a home lab at home with tons of switches and routers, and they've set up spanning tree, and they've done multiple routes, and they've configured this, and they're doing that, and they can show you the diagrams. They are in that world of networking. I might consider them overqualified for this position, which, by the way, is a real thing. Overqualification is a significant concern for you when you walk into these jobs. You want to interview and match exactly what the job description is for that position. And if I looked at this person who was very well on their way, they're going to get a job doing network administration. Clearly, they're in the protocol world. They get it. If they're interviewing for help desk, I'm not going to hire them. I'm going to let them go find a job where they'll be much more engaged and much more interested, because they'll come into this job in the help desk and they're not going to get any questions about Cisco switches or routers or spanning tree or routing tables or SD-WAN or anything. And they're going to be super bored and kind of upset. They spent all this time on the CCNA. They love that technology. They want to be in that world, but maybe there's a different path. Maybe they either need to look for jobs that are about entry-level networking, or they need to adjust their resume and their presentation to be, I have my Network Plus and my A Plus. I'm a perfect fit for this help desk. Maybe they don't even mention they have a Cisco certification. This happens all the time. I know, because I do this all the time. When interviewing for jobs, there's certain things I don't want to tell them because I think it leads them in another direction. I tell them exactly what fits best for this position. Maybe I give them some credentials that are a little bit beyond the scope, but not much. You have to be very careful with that. So I tell people all the time, don't count on Cisco as being some magic golden key that gets you through any door, because it doesn't work that way. And as far as starting with the CCNA because it pays more, why aren't you starting with the CCIE? That pays even more. Well, you don't start with a CCIE because it's super hard to get. And you don't start with a CCNA because it's relatively hard to get. You start with entry level, where you start at the beginning learning the fundamentals and then you work into the others. So what strategy works best for you, that's really your answer to your answer that you need to come up with. That's just the question. You're going to have a different path, a different idea, different things that you would want to do, and you need to find the path that works best for you. And simply having a Cisco certification is not the be-all, end-all. You need to really think about some different levels of strategies to work towards. Other questions. Let's keep going. Other things that are here. So this is probably a good one. This is a broader question, kind of fits more into the broader scope that we were just talking about. This is from Looking Glass, who asks, "So, Professor, I'm psychology major with no certs, but wants to start with graduate school and a cybersecurity degree. What's your perspective?" Okay, so let's first figure out, what are you looking to do? Now, you say cybersecurity, so I think, like many people, the world of IT security is interesting. It's exciting. It's something you want to get into. And so here's where we want to be, is getting more of a formal education on skills that will help us move into an IT security or cybersecurity type degree. And if that's what the degree focuses on, that's great. The term cybersecurity is a very broad, nonsensical, non-defined word. It doesn't mean anything. So when somebody says, I'm going to get a cybersecurity degree, I don't know what that necessarily means. Does that mean you're very focused on application development and making the applications secure? Or does that mean that you're working in a true IT role where you are making sure the data is safe? Those are two very different jobs. And when you throw into the mix of this graduate school, now I have to kind of tell everybody, hold on, let's put on the brakes. There's a lot going on here, and we need to kind of break out what each one of these things means or doesn't mean for you. First, I would really highly, highly, highly recommend that you immediately go out to your favorite job posting site, or multiple job posting sites even, and start looking around your particular geographical area for entry-level cybersecurity jobs, whatever those happen to be. Hopefully they will define what that is in the job posting. That's why you often hear me calling it IT security, because it really focuses on the IT side of things. So already, if you look through those job postings, do any of those job postings ask you for a graduate degree in cybersecurity? I would bet not many of them do. Generally speaking, broadly speaking, and there are certain cases where this does not apply, but broadly, graduate degrees in IT don't tend to get you much more than maybe some upward mobility later on in your career. Having a higher level, a master's degree, or even a PhD in some cases, automatically qualifies you in some companies as being able to have a role in management. That might be something you want to do. It might be something you don't want to do. You can go either way with this. With IT, you can make a lot of money, have a lot of flexibility in your job, and never have a management role. But there's other jobs in IT where management does pay very well and does have flexibility. So it really depends on you. But IT is not a type of job that requires you to go into management to continue your upward mobility. There's plenty of upward mobility in the technical ranks of IT. So having a graduate degree is not necessarily critical as much as it might be in other fields. In IT, it does not require you. In fact, the one of the things that I often say, it was such a telling statement, was one made by a professional, someone high up within a university, who said, well, we don't do IT degrees because we're here for teaching people and having them learn. We're not here as a university to train people, as if training people was so beneath them. But in fact, you'll see this in many four-year universities. There's not a great IT program in most four-year universities because they don't want an IT program. They're not interested in an IT program. They see it as something that is very procedural. They see it as sort of the modern version of a plumber or someone who can fix an air conditioner. They think they think it at that level. Like, they don't teach air conditioning repair. So why would they teach operating system repair? They really do think this. So graduate school may not give you the skills you were hoping to have. It might give you a piece of paper that says you have a master's degree, and that certainly has some value associated with it, but it doesn't necessarily get you started in cybersecurity. You really need to be at a level where you have already accumulated a good knowledge in operating systems, a good knowledge in networking, and that positions you the best for moving into what I call more of an analyst or engineering role within IT security. We're not going to consider you ready to go in IT security until you know how Windows works. You know how to secure Linux. You have an understanding of the advantages and disadvantages of security in Mac OS. You know networks. You understand routing. You understand switching. You know how networks are secured. You understand how firewalls are able to allow or disallow certain applications or certain port numbers through the network. Once you know how those fundamentals technologies work, then we can consider you for a position as an IT security engineer or analyst, because now you're ready to learn from those fundamentals. You've got a good foundation that you built. Now let's stack the security on top of it. There's not a lot of true entry-level roles into IC security because of that, because you need the foundation first. The entry-level roles in IT security are entry-level as long as you already have an extensive level of knowledge that you can now enter into IT security. So that is why I tell people when they start talking graduate degrees and other types, I tell them, wait, figure out your strategy first. And if you are in an area of the world where most of the jobs that you're interested in are focused on graduate degrees and people with graduate degrees, then by all means, go get a graduate degree. There's still value in having that formal education. But I would say probably the vast majority of these and the way that you move up in the industry with these doesn't require a graduate degree. You don't need to go another 2 years and spend all that money when you could have already had a job in help desk. If you apply yourself, you would even have a job where you could go into operating system administration and some security in there, maybe Active Directory, Linux, Mac OS. Maybe then you add on a little networking. And in 2 to 3 years, if you apply yourself, you've now worked yourself into a position where you could potentially apply to an IT security job. So those are your two options then, or at least as I laid them out, those are two options available to you, where you could spend 2 years in college and now you're starting at the bottom, or you could just start at the bottom and 2 years from now, you would already have positioned yourself as being ready to move up into a role that is going to get you into an IT security job, regardless of the major. And that's another piece I want to really make clear is technically a psychology major, being more of a liberal arts degree, it's not a technical degree. But then again, my degree was in business management. That was not a technical degree either. And because the 4-year universities aren't handing out IT degrees, IT, Bachelor of Science, those don't tend to exist. They're starting to come up more and more, but the vast majority of 4-year universities don't offer a 4-year Bachelor's of Science degree in information technology. And if they do, it is a unusually positioned degree because there's not a lot of IT in it. There's a lot of engineering, a lot of programming, and they just call it IT. So I tell people, be careful about committing yourself to a graduate degree when one may not be required, but also this may be a good chance to take a step back, look at a broader picture of where you want to be over the next year, the next 2 years, the next 5 years, and figure out, is going back to school and getting a graduate degree the best strategy based on what the market is asking for? Because ultimately that's what you're fighting with, is the market. And if you find that a lot of jobs in your area want a graduate degree, go get it. But I think what you're probably going to find is most of them would like a Microsoft certification, a cloud certification, a CompTIA certification, a Cisco certification. They want something that's a little more practical. I'm not one to argue about this because I get to train people on the internet with these fantastic technologies where they can get a job or get a better job. And I'll just keep doing this until the 4-year schools finally figure it out. But I don't think they're going to. I think this is going to be what we do because this is how the industry has worked, gosh, for the last 20 years. This is what we have done. It's a well-established, well-defined path to get from the lower levels up to the higher levels. And it's based on certifications, your own personal knowledge, formal degrees, who you happen to know in an organization, and your own personal drive, your own need to learn these things and to learn them as fast as possible. And the more you do of that, the faster you will move up, the more options will be available to you, the more jobs will suddenly become available to you because you've been doing the research to get you those jobs. It is a remarkable pathway. It's very different than perhaps other lines of work. It's very different than working at a transportation company. It's very different than working in a medical field. It has its own way. IT has its own way of doing things and has its a very directed and self-directed way to allow you to move up the ranks. And it's really up to how hard you personally want to work on it. And the harder you work, the faster you'll move up, the more flexibility you'll get, the more money you'll make. And it is just a very common formula that works over and over and over and over again to provide that flexibility. And if you want to provide for your family and yourself, it's a great way to do it. So that I think is probably where most people would want to go with this. And that's what I would recommend you have a look. Really start to evaluate what you're doing with those and what makes sense. And I think that's going to give you the best place to go as well. Well, I've gone way over on my time. I apologize, or not. I think we got through some very good questions today. Thank you for all the questions. I thought this was a good system to set this up. I'm starting to figure out how everything works now. So I think the Thursday study group might be a little bit even smoother than what we've done today. I want to thank everyone for sort of doing and working through this new system. It's one that's kind of fun, and I've enjoyed stepping through it and figuring out the details as we've worked through it as well. It's one I think we're going to stick with. This works fantastic. Thank you for being here in the first hour. Don't forget about the calendar. We'll tell you when the next live event is going to be. We have one on Thursday. Come on back for our Security Plus study group on Thursday. We've got plenty more questions to go through, and we've got another Network Plus study group next week as well. We're on Discord when we're out of here. You can find us there practically any day of the week. There's always something interesting going on. Join us on our website at professormesser.com/Discord. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being here, and we will see you next time on the Network Plus study group. Thanks, everybody.